And we're a go for tonight. Welcome. And if you're wondering why there's snow behind me, because in Drumheller, Alberta, that's what it looks like outside. Yes. So, just so you know, this there's a lot of information about narcissism tonight, and so if we go over 90 minutes, I will have to do a part 2 on the podcast, but we'll keep going on one video for YouTube and Facebook to make things simple. So this is live, so please ask your questions as we go. There's no dumb questions. However, if I am going to answer the question a little later on, I will let you know. If you're watching this after the fact, I will be happy to answer your questions if you leave them in the comment. All right. Now, I encourage you to subscribe to either the Facebook page or to the YouTube channel as a way of saying your thank you for all our hard work in presenting and researching all these different materials that we're presenting. And share this with people so they can recognize narcissism and avoid getting hurt by them, or realize that you don't just recover from a narcissistic relationship or a parent, you do need quite a bit of work and assistance. So don't suffer in silence, don't suffer alone. What qualifies me for tonight's talk? I was a child of a narcissistic mother and I married a narcissist. So putting those two together, I've seen all different facets of narcissism and how to get out of it and how to heal yourself. So that's going to be the whole talk that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about them as individuals at first, then specifically as a parent, and specifically as a partner. And so there's lots of examples that came to mind when I was preparing this podcast. And I'm doing this to help those who are struggling because they are either in a narcissistic relationship or dealing with narcissistic individuals. And you may have to deal with them through work or because they're your cousin or something. So either way, no matter how you meet them, it's nice to be able to recognize them and also how to protect yourself from them. So let's get going, shall we? We'll get that going. So what is narcissism? Now, if you look online, there's a lot of different Pinterest on, narcissistic mother, narcissistic father, blah, blah, blah. But truly, the real definition that comes from narcissism is from the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorder called DSM-5. That's the scientific way of describing what it is. So narcissistic personality disorder is a pattern of grandiosity, a need for admiration, a lack of empathy. The disorder is classified in the dimensional model of personality disorders. So it's an umbrella, yes? And under this umbrella is the narcissism. Now, narcissistics can often have difficulty maintaining work and definitely relationship. Narcissism is highly prevalent in society. So if you're thinking, I was just talking to someone, inviting them to this talk, and they were saying, I'm hearing that word a lot recently. I think that with the advent of social media, they went under the radar for a long time, but now they're in the spotlight. So, which is nice, but it's actually prevalent in society. So I was glad to find that, because I was starting to think, like Freud, we're all crazy. But no, it actually is quite prevalent. Now, historically, narcissistic personality disorder can develop in different settings. So some studies will suggest that it's a genetic predisposition towards the disorder, that if you have traits of aggression, reduced tolerance to distress, and inability to regulate your emotion, those three qualities are prominent in persons with that disorder. Developmental experiences, negative in nature, being rejected as a child, and a fragile ego during early childhood may contribute to the occurrence of a narcissistic personality disorder in adulthood. But also, and so as you can see, there's many, many different ways that this can produce a narcissistic person. But one of the other ways is excessive praise, including the belief that a child may have extraordinary abilities, may lead to a narcissistic personality disorder. Medically, the issue with narcissism is that it often is coexistent with other mental disorders, rendering the diagnosis challenging. So, also, substance abuse is most often associated with narcissism. Other personality disorders can actually tack themselves on top of a narcissistic personality disorder, such as antisocial personality disorders, borderline personality disorder, histrionic personality disorder, and schizotypal personality disorders are also common and associated with a narcissistic personality disorders. And the worst combination is a person with antisocial personality disorders mixed in. All right. So there was very few research actually done on narcissism. And why is that? There's research done on depression because people don't want to be depressed. And so they'll complain to their doctor. And there's enough people complaining that it's worth studying and it's worth finding a solution. However, there's not one narcissistic person that's ever going to say they're narcissistic. And so therefore, they don't think they have a problem. They don't seek help. And because they're not asking for help, there is no research to help find a solution to this. So tonight, we're not going to focus on curing narcissism. We're going to focus on the person who is the victim of the narcissist. All right. Now, the diagnosis is very difficult because the only way to corroborate that personality disorder requires evaluation of long-term patterns of functioning. And so that's not the first thing they'll say when they go into the doctor's office. But that being said, there are two subtypes recognized by the scientific community. One is called grandiose. The grandiose subtype includes things like overt grandiosity, presence of aggression, and boldness. And this type has had some research done, and it includes evidence of behavior of overt aggression, lack of empathy, and exploitation of others, lack of remorse, overwhelmed with anger, and very flashy, and a very black and white mode of thinking. Now, the other one is the vulnerable narcissistic personality disorder. And I don't like the name because they're not vulnerable, but they're pretending to be vulnerable. And that's the key, right? Pretending. They are not. They're in control the whole time and they're planning on hurting you the whole time, but they're acting vulnerable, which makes them look like they're the victim. And they like everybody to think that they're the victim. And that's how they played their card. So the other one is flamboyant, but this one tries to pass as a victim. However, even though they present with hypersensitivity and defensiveness, they're easy to miss, but their defense mechanism is to cover up their feeling of inadequacy and anxiety and loneliness. So they demonstrate rage, they take criticism personally, they're easily ashamed, and they do not trust others. But they crave importance, attention, and privilege. They're just going about it a different way. They're going about by pretending to be a victim. So they suffer from anxiety, depression, and inner emptiness, excessive jealousy, envy, and blame. They blame others for the mistake. But this is also a thing that's done by the grandiose. So really, I'm not sure that they can be separated all that much. So some say there's a third type, which is the high-functioning narcissistic, which actually achieve their goal, but they're achieving their goal by manipulating, lying, and exaggerating, but they do crave success and admiration. So I'm going to stick with the two subtypes from the DSM because that covers pretty much everything. Now, what does a narcissistic look like? Okay, so some people are going to say, so are they always dressed nice? Not particularly. Do they comb their hair the same way? No. So at first look, they look like everybody else. They don't look like junkies. They don't look, you can't identify them physically. There's nothing weird about them. That's actually one of the things that they blend in. They're not trying to stand out in that way. They're just trying to be spectacular or pretending to be spectacular. The DSM tells us that a narcissistic will be have will go with grandeurs of ideals and jobs and things. And when they're young, you could think, well, he's a dreamer. But as they get older, you start to see that they do this to get admiration. They do lack empathy, beginning by early adulthood. They're preoccupied with fantasies of success, power, brilliance, beauty, and perfect love. They believe that they're special and they can only be understood by or should be associated with special people or institutions. They require excessive admiration. They have a sense of entitlement, such as unreasonable expectation or of favorable treatment or compliance with their expectation. So in that category would be the Karens, right? Is exploitative and takes advantage of others to achieve their own hand. They lack empathy, and they're unwilling to identify with the needs of others. They're often very envious of others, and they would prefer if people were envious of them. Now, that doesn't sound so bad, right? When you read it like that, you're like, oh, I can spot that guy from a mile away, or that girl for that reason. However, let's look at what it does to their victims, be it their children, their spouse, their friends, or anybody they come into contact with, and realize just how harmful that behavior gets. Now, is narcissistic personality curable? Well, think about it. They lie about their history, their parents. They pretend to have no flaw. They never made any mistakes. They're pure as white snow, which is why I picked that background. The world they created is based on lies. There's hardly any truth to it. And so therefore, if they were to be curable, they would first have to admit to all this. And that would make their whole world crumble. And so they actually do anything and everything they can to stop that from actually happening. If someone is depressed, they'll seek help, but a narcissistic will never seek help. First, in order for that to happen, you have to admit you have a problem. And if they do, they'll only do so once they actually do collapse. And this occurs when a narcissist can no longer maintain the complex and extensive web of lies and betrayals they've spun in their entire environment. Because don't think that it's just the spouse that's affected or just the child, or it's everyone. Everyone is in their bubble. Whoever touches their bubble gets sucked in the bubble. So the walls of the castle come crumbling down, and then they're left exposed. And the masks fall off, and all the victim begins to wake up and see that it was all a game that they were playing, and they begin to back away. However, a good narcissist may lose a person, but they will have already been grooming other people to keep their circle active. And so this doesn't happen normally until they're quite old. And they feel exposed, extremely depressed, and alone. They have very poor relationship to feed off their ego of, and they will literally have panic attacks, anxiety, and depression. But that's only going to happen once they're old and there's no bridges left. Everything's been exploded. The narcissist as a person translate to them being right all the time. And they use several techniques to do so. So we'll be exploring those techniques so you can recognize them and then identify them if they're inside your field of social world. To them, they need you, but they want you to think that you need them. And so they will achieve this through a series of skills. But they want you to think that you're worthless. Yet, interesting enough, you're not good enough, you're worthless, but they won't leave you. And they like making you feel that you need them, because then you'll stay, right? They need you to stay. They won't enjoy taking care of you. Forget that. They enjoy making you suffer. They enjoy seeing you in pain. And they actually, so jealous and envious should you distinguish yourself with anything. they will make you pay for it, because then that makes them less, and they don't like feeling less. And so they'll chip away at you, at your self-esteem and at your confidence, until there's nothing left. You won't be even able to recognize yourself at the end if you stay long enough. They don't like you to recognize that you're unique and you have capabilities, abilities, and gifts. And they just simply cannot come second to anyone, be it their coworker, their spouse, or their children, or their other siblings. Now, the next behavior I will explain, a lot of it online, and I saw a lot of posts on Pinterest and things like that, and they're saying narcissistic mother, narcissistic father. Listen, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. That they're a parent, a spouse, or a friend, they will use these techniques on everyone. But after I describe those, I will show you, demonstrate to you what it looks like if it's the parent doing this and if it's the spouse doing this. However, everything they do is to avoid exposure of all the lies they've been telling so far. So it's all about image management. It's always a game of control and manipulation. To that effect, they have an extensive toolbox in all sorts of defense mechanisms they created over the years to hold their little fragile ego together. So to that extent, when one of the manipulation they will use is triangulation. That's when it's a toxic person or a manipulative person. So it's not only used by the narcissistic people, but that's one of their techniques that they do use, is brings a third person into the relationship in order to remain in control. They will be limited or no communication between the other two people, and they are both being manipulated, oftentimes one against the other. The narcissistic mirroring is a manipulation technique used by a narcissistic individual to create a false sense of connection with another person by mimicking their thoughts, their feelings, their interests, and behavior. So basically, whatever you like, amazingly enough, they like. Whatever you want, amazingly enough, that's what they want. But when it comes time to actually pay the piper, then all of a sudden they're like, oh no, I never said that, and I'm not interested in that, then I don't know what you're talking about. Before I was married, I made it very clear to my ex-husband that I wanted to return back east because we were out west. And he's like, yes, of course. And I said, so I'd like to achieve that by becoming an instructor, moving to Regina for a few years, and then go to Quebec. Yes, that's a great idea. That sounds fantastic. And when that move came, guess what? He's like, no, I'm not going. And I'm like, okay, well, now we're getting a divorce. Although you'll see, it took a lot more than that for me to get to the divorce part. But that was the first thing that started to make it feel very real that I was manipulated the entire time. So I think that's the hardest thing for the people who are waking up to a narcissistic person, is they wonder, how was I manipulated? How did I let that happen? Well, the answer to that is they're very, very good at what they do. So you shouldn't blame yourself. That being said, you should heal yourself to make sure that no one does that to you ever again. But you're not the one to blame. They also love a pity party. They're immature and very selfish. They act like a 2-year-old. And that's usually if the reason for their narcissistic personality is created, usually when a critical incident stops their emotional development around that age of 2. So that's why they behave like that. They never grew past this critical wound that they got when they were very, very little. Now, they're the epitome of victimhood, all right? They are expert victim, and they know how to exploit someone's goodwill. That's probably why the rumor says that empaths fall for narcissistic people. It's not true. Anyone can fall for a narcissistic person. But if you're a good person and you have goodwill, they are very good at manipulating your guilty conscience and your protective, nurturing instincts in order to benefit themselves. they're not stupid. They eventually figure out what works and what doesn't, and they keep going after what works in order to, build up their ego more, as it's so fragile. The other technique they will use is projection. Now, projection is when they project their bad behavior onto other, and then they criticize them for the very thing that they're doing. An example of that is I was at my ex-husband's front door dropping off one of the kids, and I'm asking to see the older one. And he tells me that I'm a bad mother. He used another word, but I can't remember for the life of me because it's not important anymore. But I stood there at the door going, wait a second. Am I a bad mother? No, I'm actually a very good mother. So this isn't about me. This is this projection. You're projecting your behavior onto me. I see. And instead of arguing, because you're never going to win an argument, and I'll never bring enough facts forward to convince him otherwise, I just said, well, that's your opinion, and I'll see them on the soccer field, and I left. You didn't lose. You're winning when you're doing this, okay? The narcissistic, if the narcissistic ever accuses you of something, it's also because they're doing it. So if they're accusing you of cheating, they're cheating on you. If they're accusing you of stockpiling money, they're stockpiling money. So listen to what they're saying, because part of their accusation is literally their confession. So if you're wondering what's going on, just listen to what they're saying. That's really important clues to tell you what's really going on. Another technique is the passive-aggressive behavior, like the silent treatment. Now, let's not misunderstand. Not everybody who's passive-aggressive is a narcissistic person. However, a narcissistic person will use the silent treatment to continue manipulating you. They figure out, there's the 5 types of love that exists, right? The giving of time, the giving of gifts, and all that stuff. They're very good at figuring out what is your button. What is it? How do you receive love? How do you feel loved? And then they'll use it against you. And the silent treatment is an effective way to hurt someone and withdrawing affection from someone. It's frustrating because for them, it's all about being in control. The avoidance, the silence, the disempowerment, it's an unhealthy way of communicating. And a normal person will let you know that they need some time to gather their thoughts. Whereas they're not trying to gather their thoughts, they're just trying to control you. So it's a brutal and abusive behavior and a red flag, all right? The immaturity is the red flag, right? The silent treatment, there's passive-aggressive everywhere. But the fact that they are completely immature in a relationship should give you some pointers. Now, the silence also makes inequality in the relationship because you want to solve the issue. It's uncomfortable for you. You know that you want to resolve something that's going on, and he won't talk to you or she won't talk to you. So there's different forms of silent treatment. There's the stonewalling. There's refusing to address your concern, or simply walking away when you're trying to talk about it. But of one form of the passive aggressive that I found difficult to deal with, because my way of receiving love is receiving hugs. So this lack of touch and affection, and this can happen to a child, not just in a couple, right? Because a child needs to be hugged. It needs that gentle touch of you petting their hair or just you holding their hands, just as much as in a couple when you cuddle together or when you walk hand in hands together, right? This form of withdrawing this is another way to treat you badly. They want you to keep reaching out and flatter their needs to be superior, and that your world is all about them. So they will use the silent treatment to punish you and teach you a lesson, especially if you're trying to set up some boundaries. Good luck with that. It's not easy, right? And especially when a narcissistic person. This way, they'll regain the power and control of the relationship. And I will say this a few times during this podcast because some of you need to hear this multiple times. They do not value you, and they will try to avoid responsibility at all cost. So this getting attention, what does that look like? They will try to ruin any special occasion by getting the attention, even if it's not about them. So they'll photobomb the pictures, or they'll do things so that you're drawn away from whatever you're trying to do to pay attention to them. One example was I was getting ready to have one of my baby baptized, and we're doing it in at his mother's location, which was not close to my home. So I have to put a lot of things together in order to organize this party. I only have a few days to do so. And instead of helping out, he went out drinking with one of his buddies. And the next night, he also went out drinking again. This time, I found out later, to cheat on me. Meanwhile, he comes home, he has a horrible hangover, and he can't help and do anything. And he's not even there during the baptism. And so what do people ask, you think? Oh, how's the baby? No. Where's Jody? Where is he? How come he's not here? It's the baptism of his baby. Where did he go? Right? Another way to get attention at all costs was when my daughter graduated from high school. And he wore a uniform. And it's a very attractive uniform. So instead of the attention being put on our daughter, who's graduating from high school, everybody and the other families wanted him to be in their pictures. And so my daughter's like, I want to take a picture with that. I'm like, yeah, well, he's in everybody else's pictures over there. I guess you're going to have to wait. So maybe we can take pictures with you meanwhile. And then when he's done, he'll come over and you can take pictures with him. Yeah, that's what they do. They don't care that they're ruining it for the person whose day it is, because it's not about them and they don't like that. So they really, really have to turn it around to make it about them. And they'll take no responsibility for any of it. Their sense of entitlement tells them that whatever they've done, it was okay for them to do it. They will assert their authority in saying, this is the way it is, and so it's not my fault. And so they have, I don't know if I can even use the word lack. They have no accountability. Whatever they do in the moment is for them, and whatever the consequences is not important. They don't care about that. They truly believe that they're the victim. And so why would they take responsibility for their word and their actions? They just use the blame and shift it over to someone else. A narcissist changes the subject, diverts the victim's attention so that they don't have to take responsibility for their wrongdoing. This is one of their tactiques, right? One of their way of handling the situation. They will deny any wrongdoing years after the fact. They are still as pristine as white snow as the day it fell on the ground. That's that. So let's look, for example, you're in debt. You can't pay your debt load, and you have to take a consolidation loan because he went out and bought a 4x4 and doohickeys and a bigger TV and all the things you didn't need, but he was doing it for the family. And it's okay. You know, we can just go to the bank, borrow money, and pay for it. And by the way, it's going to be in your name because my name is ruined. So this consolidation loan goes to you, not me. Yeah. And because you're suffocating in debt, what do? You actually buy into it. So this shifting of blame, the narcissistic projection, they use to pivot the blame of their action onto others. So this is often done unconsciously to protect their low self-esteem. So because you have to understand, any tiny mistakes they've made would be perhaps the start of a crack that would rupture this idealized image that they've created of themselves. And they can't have that. No cracks, none. Eventually, they become abusive. Now, they may not be physically abusive. My ex-husband was never physically abusive, but they can go there. Some other narcissistic personality can go all the way to being physically abusive. However, if they feel like they're losing control, they will abuse you with mental games, emotional abuse, and mental cruelty. It leaves no marks. And so it's much harder to identify. And it's so sneaky that it takes you a while to realize that you're in actual abusive relationship. And that's why we're doing this podcast, so that if you think someone you know might be in that kind of relationship, just share the video with them, because we're going to describe specific behaviors that's going to help you say, see, check mark, check mark, check mark. You need to look into this. This is important. So then there's the smear campaign. So I look this way because that's where my screen is for YouTube comments. The smear campaign. This is unbelievable, because they're so good that you don't even know it's happening. And you can't imagine it's happening because things are going well. They start smearing you from the very beginning, and they belittle you and they make you look small to everybody else, not necessarily to you. And this is the important about the smear campaign. They're campaigning. They're not doing it to you yet, but they're just making sure that the whole world thinks you're terrible, so that if something happens, no one will believe what you're saying. That's so sneaky. It's terrible. They will start the smear campaign long before planning to leave you, because that gives them control if that were to happen. And we have lots of people watching. Don't forget, if you have a question or a comment, just put it on there and I'll try to answer it as I go along. So, because they know that there will come a time when they'll need people on their side, because you'll wake up eventually and you'll leave. So they're preparing for that as they just met you. And they will tell people they deserve a medal for staying with you this long, right? Because you're so terrible. The one thing you should ask yourself is, if someone is constantly talking about someone being terrible and awful, and the question you should ask is, why are you still with them? If they're that bad, why are you with that person? Now, this campaign is also very effective because it keeps you isolated. No one wants to be your friend. No one wants to deal with you. You're too terrible. You're an awful person. And so prevents you from making new friends, and that stirs chaos in the groups if you have a group of friends. And that's one of the ways they use the control. They use the control by dividing and control the situation, right? The saying is, divide and conquer. They divide and conquer. The isolation part is they will keep their own personal friendship very far apart from each other, so they can't talk to each other, because then the truth would come out and say, well, I thought you said that. No, that's not what happened. And then, their whole universe would fall apart. So a narcissistic will have friends, but, they won't mingle together. And they will isolate you. This is, by you being isolated, your life will be empty of everything, empty of emotion, empty of friends, empty of family, and anything else that matters to you. So they leave you in this very empty space. And who else do you have but him? And that's when they got you. That's when they feel that they finally roped you in and you got nowhere to go, no one to talk to, so they got you. They leave you at the end. They leave you doubting human nature to the point where you feel like you're going to give up on yourself and on your very life. And even if that were to happen, they would be happy, because then again you'd killed yourself, and oh my gosh, now they have to live with that, and the pity party would be on, and they get so much attention from it. Yes. If you think I'm joking, I'm not. The lying. I don't even know how they keep track of the lies. I honestly have no idea how it's even possible to keep track of all the lies. They won't hesitate to kick you while you're down. They'll twist everything you say and you do, and they'll lie about everything that matters. They'll treat the strangers better than their alleged loved ones to maintain this facade that they're such a great person. They won't hesitate to abandon friends and family. and even put down their siblings and their own mother. They'll sell everything and everyone to make sure this bubble world of lies sticks together. The grandiosity after all that is that it can be described as attention seeking, and they love to be the center of the room. So if they're not, they will make sure they destroy the center of the room, or they push it aside until they're the center of the room. They'll brag about their achievements. They won't validate yours. They won't acknowledge you, and they won't support you emotionally. But they have a completely superior attitude that they're they're completely unreliable. Which brings me to the Jekyll and Hyde. They are definitely two-faced, and they will talk behind everyone's back. No one is safe. What usually they do is they'll talk behind someone. So they'll say, Joe did this to Jack, and then he tells to the neighbor. But then if he tells a story to someone else about Joe, and Joe's their friend, they'll reverse that Jack did this to Joe. And so everybody thinks that whatever is happening, and maybe nothing happened between Joe and Jack, but now he's trying to spread rumors that something happened to split these two apart because they're too friendly to each other. And that's, he's feeling excluded. So that way he's going to be friends with Joe and friends with Jack, but Jack and Joe are not friends anymore. So they have more time to spend with the narcissistic person. They're in public a certain way, but behind closed doors, that's when they become very, very harsh, and they'll make you feel anxious. But they'll lower your confidence, but eventually they'll do that in public as well. And that's, I think, when the mask starts to break, is when they start thinking they can get away with it in public, and people actually think, no, that's not possible. That person's not like that. That's not how I know them. And they start beginning to question the story they're trying to sell you. So then they try to make you feel guilty, right? By pushing the blame on you, the guilt trip turns around and starts hitting you. And you're like, oh, did I do that? Was I like that? And it takes so many forms. I was in a restaurant and I was eating salad, and apparently I took a bite that was too big. So he was telling his friends, he was apologizing to his friends that I had no manners and that I was so uneducated, and how dare he bring me to the restaurant to meet his friends. And I'm thinking, really? What did I just do that was so rude and so bad? I'm like, I'm sorry, what? And they make you doubt yourself. And then I'm an exuberant personality, love to laugh. I think laughter is one of the most beautiful things God created. And we should laugh every time we get. And if sometimes it's really funny, well, you laugh out loud. I mean, it's funny, right? But you made me guilty about laughing too loud, because I was trying to attract attention to myself, and I should be more demure and more quiet. Well, you know what? I ended up stopping laughing. And if you stop laughing, you know what replaced laughter is sadness. So they'll guilt you about just about anything. Here's an example for a parent. In my case, I come from a family of 8 children. And my mother was trying to blame me for the fact that she couldn't get a career. And I'm actually quite intelligent. Not that my ex-husband would ever say that, but I looked at my mom. I'm like, there's literally 9 years between me and my oldest brother. If you wanted to go back to work, you had 9 years to do so. So you were never planning on going back to work. So why are you blaming me for this? Why am I supposed to feel guilty about, going back to work? I couldn't buy it. And sometimes if you don't buy into that guilt trip, then you pay for it. So I learned that through many meetings, that, you're supposed to feel guilty. If you want to feel guilty, at least don't contradict them. And as a child, you see the effect of a parent, of a narcissistic parent. It does a lot of damage. There's no easy way to get away from them because you have to wait until you're older. Personally, I left when I was 16 because enough was enough. But not everybody can do that, afford that, or have the strength to do that. I don't know. So I just thought, and this would come back a lot, like trying to guilt me about this. And one time I said, well, I don't know how I knew about abortion, but I wasn't even a teenager, right? I was quite young. And I said, well, if you didn't want me, if you thought I was going to impede your career, you could have just had an abortion. And her reply was, well, I'm a Catholic. I couldn't do that. I'm like, well, I'm number 8. So you also knew how having children happens. So again, I refused to be the one to blame for this. And so as I kept talking back, she figured that I was a loose cannon and a threat to this bubble of her world. And she started the smear campaign where she was telling everybody that I was worse than all the 6 boys put together. I was a liar. And in saying that, she's trying to discredit anything that's going to come out of my mouth because, oh, well, she's a liar. She lies all the time. It's unbelievable, the stuff she comes up with. So if I say anything about her hurting me, her beating me, her doing this, her lying that, her gossiping, her manipulating to anyone, they'll just say, you're just looking for attention. Right? So I'm completely dismissed because that smear campaign, that's what it does. So she would say I was unruly, disrespectful. Meanwhile, I'm a straight A student and I started working at 14. Right? So the reality doesn't stick to what they're trying to present to the world, but unless someone gets to know you and looks at your report card and knows how assiduous you are, everything just goes like a hot knife and butter, and you're a terrible person. So eventually, my solution was, I told my dad, I said, listen, if I can't live here anymore. I started being suicidal. My first attempt was at 6 years old when my aunt moved away and I was going to be stuck with my mom full time. And that was enough for me to want to kill myself. And I did. I tried to walk in front of a car. But I lived in a very, very good neighborhood where people didn't go fast and they saw me coming a mile away. And then I got in trouble for not looking both ways before crossing the street. And it's like, no, actually, I was trying to kill myself, but okay. And then by the time I was 13, 14, 15, I was so miserable. And I don't know, by 16, I found a way out and I took my way out. I just got out. I'm glad I did. Because here I am today trying to bring some of that experience to help someone else out, right? And so this gaslighting, this psychological form in which the abuser attempts to sow self-doubt and confusion into their victim's mind, they can do that as a parent or as a spouse. So typically, they're gaining power and control over the person by distorting reality and forcing them to question their own judgment or their own intuition. And you're going to say, oh, does someone do that? Well, when you're young and you say, oh, this happened, and your mother says, that never happened, you must have dreamed that. And you're like, wait, what? Because you're so young, you're questioning these things you're not necessarily understanding of your world. And you're like, oh, okay. And then there was a point when I was about 6 or 7, I was afraid to speak because I wasn't sure I could discern reality or my dream world thought that she said I was having. It's very disconcerting. And this can also happen, as you saw before, with a spouse, right? They're saying things. And the trick here is that you think they're saying this because they love you. They're trying to make life better for you. And so that's why you listen at first. And also, they do withhold information or they manipulate the truth around the situation to create the doubt and add to the confusion. And so, whatever you say later, they either won't hear it or they will simply say that you didn't understand. You're just stupid. You just don't get it. These mind games, the narcissist questioning your memories, your thoughts, events occurring, around what you remember correctly or not. You start questioning your sanity. That, to me, I mean, you can call it gaslighting, you can call it whatever you want. To me, is mental cruelty. That's the word I had for it. And after using denial, lying, misinformation, contradiction to make you doubt your sanity, your memories, and your perception, they continue on with all these other tools that they have of passive aggressive technique to guilt you, just about anything bad that has ever happened is now your fault. They have a way to spin it to make you think, but it happened because of you. And I was a policewoman for 20 years, and I don't know how many times I've heard a man say, it just happens this way. Women do beat men, women beat women, men beat men. I mean, it's not a gender specific thing, but well, she made me do it. What do you mean she made you do it? She's in a hospital bed. She's got broken bones, and she made you do it? Yeah. And they justify, she deserves it because she talked back to me. She deserves it because she didn't give me her paycheck. She deserves it because. Now, sadly, you think, well, the person must be stupid. Well, no, they're not. They love this narcissistic person, and they're trying to make this work. They're trying to. The manipulation don't happen like a tsunami and they all hit you all at once. It's a little bit here, a little bit there, and then they get control of this here, and they go and get control of that there. It's insidious. And so that's why you wake up one day and you're like, what is this? What kind of relationship am I in? What am I doing here? Where is this going to take me? They want you to think that you do them a favor. No, sorry. They want you to think that they're doing you a favor. So, because no one else is going to want you. You're so terrible. And they're sticking with you. So, the way to identify a narcissistic also is the way they withhold affection. They will purposely avoid physical contact. Other than blaming you for all their problems, they will then put you down should you have any measure of success. Like, if you're facing a situation at work, they'll say, oh yeah, that workplace is so terrible, you should quit. Because what happens once you quit? Now you're at home and you better do what they say because they're paying the bills. There's nothing to your advantage in this relationship. They'll consistently compare you to someone else. So whether you're being compared to sibling or you to your friend, or and then if you start to see through this, if they think that you're thinking of leaving, they will start making threats that they'll leave the relationship first. They'll kill themselves. My ex-husband did that to me. He says, I'll kill myself and I'll leave a note behind telling the kids it's all your fault. Really? You think we're going to let the kids read your letter? Now, if you want to kill yourself, that's your decision. You're doing this to yourself. You're the only one to blame. You can't blame anybody else for that. It's really interesting. When your eyes are open, you can see all this maneuvering. But while you have the wool pull over your eyes, you're so blind. And again, you're not stupid. Okay? I'm not stupid personally, and I fell for it big time. So one of the ways that they like to make you worry. So they'll forget to contact you. They won't show up when they're supposed to show up. They'll make you wait. So it's a parent forgetting to pick you up from school, or you're supposed to be on a date and then they disappear, and then you're like, oh my gosh, we were supposed to meet at this date and time, and he's not here. Did something happen? Until they finally, might text you eventually, or finally answer the phone when they feel you've worried enough and say, oh, was that tonight? I thought it was tomorrow. Can we do it tomorrow? They won't apologize. They'll just manipulate you into thinking, well, it's your fault. It's not today. It's tomorrow. And yeah, so let's make tomorrow. And the worst part is you show up the next day. That's the sad part. Your emotions, they don't count. The narcissist invalidates your thoughts and feelings. So they'll blame you for being too sensitive. And even if your concerns and your emotions are valid, he'll tell you, well, you just take things too seriously, or you're too sensitive, or it's your fault. Remember, they have no responsibility for the way you feel. And so, what are the after effects of coming into contact with a narcissistic person? Well, eventually, they will leave you a crippling burden of shame, anxiety, debt. And they'll take all the gifts and the toys. They won't think about that twice, even if they're not finished being paid. And you'll be exhausted. And they would rather see you die. And that way they can take advantage of pretending to mourn your death and play the victim for more attention. They know they can't keep a relationship. This isn't a surprise to them. So from the very beginning, they start looking for a replacement. So they start the smear campaign and look for a replacement. So a narcissistic relationship will often add to the betrayal of being cheated on. They're very charming. Don't get me wrong. That's how they rope you in. And so it's easy for them to just charm another person and charm another person. So the fact that you are not getting any touching or any, if you're in a couple, sexual relationship, it doesn't matter to them because they're getting some. So they're not too worried about you. But instead of just leaving you, they will hang on to you for as long as they can, because you're like, their solar battery power is being solared by your light. So until your light extinguishes, you're still light and you still bring something to them. So they will betray you, reject you, devalue you, but they'll try to take all your money and all your material things, and until you're completely empty and your light turns off, they will take everything they can. Now, if you're thinking, but I love him, I can fix it, I'm afraid that I'm going to burst your bubble. It's not going to happen. If you're staying with a narcissistic personality disorder person, you cannot fix them because they don't think anything's wrong with them. Ta-da! So their personality is just not built that way. They never developed a real attachment to you or to anyone else. And don't think that because it's their kids that they're attached to their kids. They are not. I from Italy. Because they have no empathy, they have no feelings, you don't need to feel sorry for them. They will simply use you. And then if you're leaving them, they'll just, have this pity party saying, oh, she was a terrible person. And I put up with her for several months or several years, and she actually left me, and oh, poor me. Don't delude yourself into the thinking that you can help them. And if they want your help, it won't be for many things, but it won't be to change. They'll ask for your help to move. They'll ask for your help to paint something. They'll make you do the work, sure, but not about them. They won't ask for help for that. They don't intend to get better, and pulling them into a reality does not work. If you do that, they'll eject you out of their lives because you're a threat to them, and you won't fix them. You'll just be blocked because you're a threat to their own lies of world they spin themselves into. And they won't thank you. They'll actually resent you and hate you for trying, because that means that you find them less than perfect. Remember that you can bring the horse to the water, but you can't make the horse drink. And in this case, the narcissistic horse will die of thirst before they admit there's anything wrong with them. Therefore, Why is it that they're so kind? They were so generous. So it's funny because in the cycle of abuse, it's called the honeymoon period in the psychological field. But I guess with the new generations, they come up with new names. They think they've discovered something new. The new name for it is love bombing. So I was like, really? That's what they call it? But it makes sense, as a descriptive of the behavior. And this applies whether it's a parent or a spouse. Love bombing is a manipulation technique used after they treated you crappy. And now you're thinking of maybe I should leave this relationship. And now they're about to lose you. And whoa, all of a sudden, the romantic gestures come and they're designed to make you feel safe. So they can come back and attack you and just chip away at you again. Love bombing actually leads to trauma bonding. So the honeymoon phase in an abuse cycle leads you to trauma bonding. Trauma bonding is when a narcissist with a narcissist is a result of intermittent positive reinforcement by the abuser. So this means that the narcissists alternate between being manipulatively abusing you and then romantically loving you, which leads to the development of this trauma bonding. Because some people, having been through the cycle often enough, says, oh, well, now he finally peaked, he finally had his moment, so now the honeymoon phase is going to start. They know what's coming next. But the question is, why do people stay? They stay because by then their self-esteem and their confidence has been destroyed and they can't leave. So the more time passes, the trauma bonding with the narcissist strengthened this, I have nowhere else to go. And at least, better devil, oh my gosh. When I hear that, my heart breaks. You know what? I'll try any other devil any day. I'll try myself. I'll give it a try. I'll give the world a chance. And it is possible to develop a post-traumatic disorder from a narcissistic relationship. You will feel anxious when you're not with them because you don't know what they're doing and what they're plotting next. You experience bouts of anxiety and depression and even panic attacks when you come across triggers that remind you of them, like text, email, and phone calls displaying their names. I remember that, I would go through my email mailbox and I honestly, I've been divorced for several years by then, but just seeing an email from my ex-husband meant, now what? And I couldn't handle it right away. It would take me 24 hours to deal with the anxiety that would come up before I could open it and see, how bad is it? What is he asking for now? What is he trying to steal from me or get from me? So this may lead to you trouble sleeping and experiencing body aches and pains, but we'll see later on, that's the post-traumatic stress. But you'll see that there's a lot more that's happening physically, emotionally, mentally to you after these relationships. So it's important to take care of yourself if you come out the other end, right? Now, let's look at narcissistic parents. Because honestly, at this point, it's important to note that it doesn't matter whether it was your mother or your father. Bowlby, a psychologist, said in his theory of attachment, recognized that a caregiver can be a biological parent or any other person that cares for the needs of an infant between 0 to 18 months old. And that will affect the future social development and relationship to themselves and to the rest of the world. This is a key time in infant development. And this is where, when it's not good, that you become a narcissist. Now, for an infant to develop the secure attachment, they require at least one person to provide physical, mental, and emotional needs. But that can be done through an aunt or a grandparent or nice neighbor. As long as it's a healthy connection, this is what's important. So I was lucky because I had a very healthy connection with my aunt. And my aunt looked after me and she did everything she could. So, and I would cry. everybody would say every time she'd come over, you'd throw a fit wanting to leave with her. And she only lived like 10 or 15 minutes away. So it wasn't that big of a deal. And I could come back the next day. I slept there as much as I could, because there I was loved, there I was cared for, there I was hugged. I was told I was beautiful. I was told I was intelligent, and it was magnificent. So I think that's probably why I was able to get out of the situation. Um, Maybe easily way, because I had something other than the dependency of this narcissistic parent. Um, Now, and the internet seems to think that there's a differentiation between a narcissistic mother or a narcissistic father. There is not. They act the same way and they do the same damage. My father was a construction man, was 6 foot tall, so well, 5'11" maybe, strong man. And my mother was this short 5 foot tall thing and a little scrawny thing, and she was the boss. She was wearing the pants. Although, to the exterior, the people looking in, they would have thought my dad's the boss. That's not the case. So the size doesn't matter. Um, it doesn't matter if it's a homosexual, heterosexual relationship. It doesn't matter. The narcissistic person is the one in control, and they will control the other parent. So a healthy parent, they want to stay attuned to their children's emotion. They want to know what they're feeling and what they have to say, and they allow their children's ability to express their own emotion and encourage them to do so, while as an adult they're managing their emotion. This is something in my house that was very interesting. Some friends would be visiting and they see my kids like completely blowing their gaskets and saying, well, what kind of behavior is this? I said, because this is the place where they can actually have emotion, and it's been contained for a whole week, and so now it's popping up, and I have to let them be very sad or very angry or whatever it is they are, so they can have emotions, so they can learn to express them, so they can eventually realize, okay, so it's okay for me to be mad, but I don't have to break anything to prove that I'm really mad. I can talk about the fact that what makes me angry, and we can try and work on finding a solution together. But I don't have to throw a fit, and I don't have to destroy anything. This is a learning thing, and you do that with your children. But when they have to deal with a narcissistic parent, that's not allowed. So if you're caught in between, then you have to have some allowance, because they don't have that ability to do the learning full time. They're doing the learning part time. A healthy parent will see their kid as individuals, respect their gifts, their ability, their wishes for their careers, and see them as individuals. So eventually they'll grow up, they'll leave, they'll make their own choices, live their own lives, and I'm, as a grown up, will take care of my life when my kids leave. And they will hold realistic, age appropriate expectations, right? So when they're supposed to be reading, when they're supposed to be talking, walking, kick a ball in the right direction, and they'll encourage their children to explore and grow, because you want to explore. What am I good at? What am I? Which direction am I heading in? You have to try different things to see what it is that makes you passionate or what you like, in order for you to eventually make these choices. A healthy parent will want their children to feel safe, heard, seen, understood, respected, encouraged, and wanted. Let me tell you, being told over and over that that you were a mistake, that you should have never been born, I never wanted you. Kind of, after a while, you're like, why am I here? Right? So it's difficult to have a narcissistic parent, because they never boost you. They never inflate you. You're their toy, their possession, and they don't intend for you to ever leave them. So remember that for a narcissistic person, appearance is everything. Well, when it comes to their children, they care on how the children make them look, not how the children look, how the children make them look. They're extremely competitive and they love you, or you think they love you, when it benefits them, meaning they'll be nice to you. That's what, love is a very charged word when it comes to narcissists because they don't love anybody but themselves. But you'll feel better. Let's put it that way. Because they'll always put their needs and their wants first. I'll give you an example. My ex-husband wanted to have the parental leave. In Canada, we have the maternity leave and then we have the parental leave. And so maternal leave goes to the mother, but the parental leave could go to either the mother or the father. And so I'm breastfeeding, I'm cooking, I'm cleaning, I'm doing laundry, I'm mowing the lawn, I'm doing the groceries, I'm paying the bills, I'm cooking all the meals so that when he comes home from work, everything is ready to eat. And I guess I was 4 months in, my 6 months, and he started asking for the parental leave, saying that it was his turn to get time off. And I'm like, no, I'm breastfeeding. I can't breastfeed if I go to work. And he's like, but it's my turn to get time off. And he was really, really insistent. So and they when I say they chip away at you, they really do. They always bring it back because they haven't won this argument. So they'll come back until they hopefully win it. That's their goal, right? They want to win this argument. So I said, fine, you can have the parental leave. And with a smug look on his face, sits back on the chair thinking, okay, I've won this one. And I said, however, I'm no longer doing groceries. I'm no longer waking up at night. Because if I'm no longer breastfeeding, you can get up at night and give the bottle to the baby because I'll be going to work in the morning and I need to be rested. I will not be cooking your food. When I come home from work, I want to have my food ready on the table. I will not be doing laundry and I will not do anything except go to work like you're doing right now. And his reply was, well, if you're going to take it that way, then you can keep it. Right. Because it's much more advantageous to him that he just goes to work his 40 hours a week while I do the 90 hours a week and wake up in the middle of the night and take care of the kids and do everything else. So it's just all about them. They will talk about you if you make them look good. Otherwise, you don't exist. And that's the making you invisible part. It's hard to swallow to be invisible. So I think that some children of narcissistic parents tends to be overachiever. With everything my mother put me through, I had the obsessive compulsive disorder to be able to cope because you never know when when they're going to hit you, punish you, because it has nothing to do with you. It's just they're releasing their anger on whoever is going to be there to get it. So I was never sure, what am I doing exactly that's causing this reaction? So there comes the development of the obsessive compulsiveness. So that's one of the things I had to deal with from having a narcissistic mother. Narcissistic mother view their daughters as competition and a threat, and they tend to emasculate their partners. A narcissistic father sees his daughters as caregivers and maids. So I'm not sure that one is better than the other, but that, gender-wise is just about the only difference. So this would apply. So a narcissistic father would see his son as a threat and tend to emasculate them as boys. And the narcissistic mother sees her sons as husband replacement, not in the bedroom, but as far as income and shelter and needs go. So if they get divorced, well, their son can pick up where the husband left off. So it's interchangeable, right? No matter what gender they are, they're the boss. So they have all the rights and they don't care about your feelings. I make this clear. They do not feel bad about you. They make you doubt yourself and your experience, and they manipulate you or take advantage of you for their own benefit. They don't take responsibility or apologize. So they keep control over all the aspects, not of just their lives, but everybody's lives. Because if anybody breaks free, that could destroy the world they created, right? So they find ways to hurt you, and they don't even look like they're the bad guy. Or they'll convince the other parent to, like my mother used to say, wait until your father gets home. And then she would tell my father how horrible I was, hoping my father would punish me. But by then, God bless him, my father are kind of clued in a little bit. And so he would send me to my room, where I think my siblings have a whole different experience, but that's theirs. They're the ultimate bully. So they demand obedience, and they have unreasonable expectations. And this can take many forms. One of the times I remember coming home, and I had a 98% average in one of my year-end report card. That means that, your average is 98, right? It's pretty good for a whole year. And her reply was, well, obviously I didn't pay enough attention. And if I was that brilliant, I should have gotten 100%. So I should apply myself more. Never a compliment. Never a, wow, that's amazing. No, that just didn't happen. Because should you start thinking you're special, then they're going to lose you. And they don't want to lose the control they have over you. So they still will try to. But eventually, you're like, come on, I got 98. That deserves a good comment. But the saving grace, as I told you, is then I would take the report card to my aunt, and I would get the praise there. So I had this counterpart that was balancing and telling me, no, you're not crazy. This is amazing. How did you manage this? You must have worked so hard to get that kind of average. So I think that's why, in my case, even though my mother did a lot of damage, she didn't completely destroy me, because I had something else supporting me and balancing the act out. So the narcissistic parent has such a fragile sense of self, and that could be due to the childhood trauma or being excessively praised. I don't know. But they will protect their ego at all costs. And their children, the children will just be a tool for them, a way to get what they didn't get. So the narcissistic parent, still very controlling, will tell you how to think, how to behave, and encourage you to trust their judgment. So a narcissistic parent, this is very important, will never encourage you to think by yourself. They'll tell you, I know better, so just listen to me and just do what I say. And so if you happen to not follow what they're saying, they will try to make you ashamed because you don't comply or follow through their demands. The importance is to have control over the whole household. So should there be more than one child, they will play favorites and pit each child against the other. You get blamed for things that you can't be responsible for. Like I remember, and this was, even at the time, I thought, where do you think I'm going to believe something like that? She blamed me for breaking the washing machine. And I wasn't allowed to touch that machine. I wasn't allowed to go near it. And she's telling my father that, well, she did this. It's our fault. And I'm looking at my dad, and I'm like, Dad, we're not allowed to touch the machine. If anything happened, the machine broke. But, she couldn't take responsibility for breaking the machine, so she had to lay the blame on someone else, and she decided to pick me. And I was like, yeah, no, I never touched this machine, so I'm not responsible for this. And I just walked away. There goes the intimidation and the punishment because you didn't obey. That comes and follows, right? The more you push their button, the more violent they will get. The narcissistic parent will act as a martyr on every given occasion. They turn the family against each other, manipulating, controlling everyone. One of the things, because I don't know if it's because I was so much younger than everybody else, but let's say I'm 6, my youngest brother is 15. By then, they have girlfriends, some of them are married. And I can hear my mother talking against the older brother's wife to the youngest brother's wife. But then when the older brother's wife comes, she's fantastic and she's an incredible cook, while this one is a terrible person. And I'm thinking, you just said that about the other. You just reversed the scenario. It's if you're able to observe them and go unnoticed, because I was so young, I think she didn't think I was seeing what was going on and all the manipulation she was doing. But that made me doubt every word that ever came out of her mouth, basically. But not everybody's so lucky. Like to my older sibling, it was pure gaslighting. You know, the I broke the silence, by the way. I spoke up, which allowed some of my siblings to say, yeah, it was like that for me too. So that's the control that a narcissistic parent has, is you think you're the only one suffering and you think you're the only bad one. And you think you're, as a joke, actually, I wish I could have that trophy to show them to you guys. But as a joke, my youngest brother and I were the brunt of most of the gate black sheeps. So I actually went and bought this trophy and I wrote all the years from when he was 18 until I was born as him getting the trophy of the year. And then after that, I alternated our names. The trophy, I said, you're not alone in this. This is my way of coping with some of the trauma, is to try to see the humor in it, right? And so sometimes we sit and we talk about things and he knows that I'm not judging him and I won't treat him that way. So we're able to share the trauma and try to heal from it, right? Try to laugh of these things now that we're free and adults doing our own thing. Now, my mother was the vulnerable type of narcissistic. So she seeked pity from others. She was the victim all the time. She cooked these big meals at Christmas and New Year's, and everybody's like, oh, that's so great, Meanwhile, what they didn't know is the entire time she was cooking, she was talking about how dare they come here and make me work this hard, and can't they just eat at their own house? And yet they come thinking, oh, we're welcome here, and it's fantastic here to come. And yeah, no, you're not welcome. But she's doing this because this will give her praise, and so if she gets praise, then at least her ego is fed. Everything, it's miserable living with a narcissistic parent because they complain all the time and you can never do anything right. So it doesn't matter how much effort, how much time you put into it. They'll never be happy. They'll never be satisfied. And I want you to understand again that vulnerable is the way they appear to the world, and it's only for a way to manipulate you. They're not vulnerable at all. And it's not any less harmful than the grandiose type. You're a tool. And as a kid, they use you for their own validation. And the coercion starts when the kids are very young. And the kids, they try to make at least, their kids feel sorry for them. And ask them from a very young age to care for them. And already prepare them that when they get old, they're going to need care and they're going to be living with them and they'll never throw them out, but then live together forever, right? Making them feel responsible for the narcissist's well-being as they get older. Putting unrealistic expectation on the children even at a very young age. They see their children as pets, possessions, prize, and they won't hesitate to pit them against each other. When it comes to discipline, it's overly exaggerated. So they'll put you away for very long periods of time. So that way, they don't have to deal with you, right? That's what they want anyway. So just so you know, is my mom or dad being unreasonable, or was I raised unreasonable? Just remember, I do have a psychology background here. For a 2-year-old child, the timeout should be 2 minutes. And trust me, 2 minutes for a 2-year-old is like the end of the world. Any longer than that, they lose the link why they're being put in timeout. Their mind has wandered somewhere else. Their attention span is no longer than that. So to send a 2-year-old for half a day or whole day into their room, you're not, you're just ostracizing them, you're isolating them, and in their room they'll play with their toys because it's all day. So 5 years old, 5-minute timeout is more than enough, and this is the maximum time that they should spend in timeout. Meaning that if the child, after a 2-minute timeout out of 5, has already calmed down and is ready to talk, you can approach them and start communicating with them why they're in a timeout and why they needed a timeout and what they need to do to get out of timeout. Right? That's a healthy way of disciplining your children. The narcissistic parent will deny love, care, and attention. However, in my case, I was happy when my mother was neglecting me, because when she was neglecting me, I was not getting beaten. When she was neglecting me, I could play quietly my own little games and escape in my mind. I think that's why I write novels and books and stories, and I love painting and stuff, because I spent so much time in my head being quiet as a kid that I developed all these different ideas and stories, and now I let them all out, right? That there's actual physical violence where it's only verbal. Don't think that you're less abused because you're not getting physically hit. Okay? You're being abused if it's verbal or if it's games, mental games. And the violence can go from pushing. One of her favorite thing was walking behind you and just hitting you in the back of the head, right? And he just didn't know what was going to happen. And I remember one time, unexpectedly, my forehead hit the table, and it really hurt my head. So after that, to prevent that from happening, I would hold my head while doing homework. So at least if she slapped me, I could help hold my head from hitting the table. They will use insults and threats, all of it to control you better and hurt you. You have no privacy with a narcissistic parent. They'll read your journals, listen on your calls. In this day and age, it would be the equivalent of tracking you on your cell phone, reading your text and spying spyware in your room. And you think I'm exaggerating? I'm not. Read your email, have secret access and background access to everything you write and do. So this constantly violating your boundaries tend to make a child unable to speak, and they'll keep things. They'll stop writing. I remember stopping writing in the diary and simply not saying anything at home. How was your day? Fine. That it was fine or not, it didn't matter. That I won an award, didn't matter. The less she knew, the better it was. So all she got from me when I figured this out was, yes, day was fine. Every day was fine, just fine. Nothing big, nothing low, nothing that she could use later on to hurt me with. So the idea is that you will have no self-esteem, right? By holding unrealistic expectation of your children, it results in frustration and your loss of self, and also possibly dependency issues. Why they love to shame their children, I don't know, but they will criticize the weight, their looks, their style, their personality, their views. They don't want you to know that you're pretty. They don't want you to know that you're intelligent, because then you could figure out I don't have to stick around. I remember her telling me I was fat all the time and I ate more than the boys ate, and I saw how much the boys ate, and I was like, I don't eat as much as they do. To the point where being at the table was very uncomfortable. So I started eating elsewhere. I would eat breakfast in the living room while watching cartoons, or simply skip breakfast and say, I don't have time. I got up late this morning. And she said, well, that's your fault. I said, yes, I'm 10 years old. You shouldn't have to wake me up to be on time for school. No. But really, I would just grab an apple or a banana, and I would bring that with me and eat that for my breakfast. So I didn't have to be at the kitchen table, and then have the lip service on how terrible I was and how ugly I looked and how fat I was, right? So the narcissistic will not care if you're special and if you have abilities, but they want to mold you to their ideal self. So what I wanted was to play the piano. What I got to do was figure skating. Now, you're going to say there's nothing wrong with figure skating. I agree, except I hate it. I hate being cold. I don't see the point of wearing nylons to go in an arena that is sub-zero temperature and then fall on the ice and be cold. I have no interest in that. My interest is piano. But my mother always wanted to do figure skating, and so I have to do figure skating because that's what she wanted. It doesn't matter that I was very talented and I had a very good ear and played the piano very well at my cousin's house. That's not what she wanted. So, and this went on and on for a long time because a child of a narcissistic parent remains the child of a narcissistic parent. You don't become an adult, you're always the child. And so they always have a way to comment on your ability and your I'm sorry, your ability and your growth. And so I'll just switch over here because we're reaching the 90-minute. So here we go. The part 2 for the podcast on narcissism. We'll get going on that. And hopefully no one else tries to call me and and we can keep with the recording. Okay, so sorry about that. I'm actually a Mensa member. So for those of you who don't know what that is I had to go through a test and I found out that my intelligence is ranking at the top 2% of the population. I'm special. I'm very artistic. I do beautiful drawings. I'm very good at school. There's many things that I should have been encouraged to pursue because of those things. But my mother saw nothing of it, never mentioned it, and didn't like the teachers reminding her that I was special or good at anything. So she stopped going to parent-teachers interview starting grade 2. My mother was hoping to, always dreamed apparently, to be an independent career woman. So she wanted me to do that for her. So when I got married and I got pregnant, she was livid. She was livid and told me I was throwing my life away and it was impossible for me to continue having a career and raising 2 children. Well, it turns out that not only did I have a career, I had 3 children and I raised them on my own. And then I developed a business and I'm an entrepreneur. So apparently having children did not impair me in doing any of those things. Kept me busy though, but it didn't prevent me from doing that. Now, because you see, the children are their bragging rights. So you're not allowed to fail because, that doesn't look good on them. But don't worry, there's a plan for that. Should you fail, they'll blame the other parents as inability to be a good parent. So it's still not their fault. In the end, what they really want is a caretaker. They want to groom you from being their child to their caretaker. They will encourage their kids not to find work so that you don't gain work experience and you have trouble finding full-time employment. And then they'll dangle the carrot that you can live with them. They'll provide a roof for you. They'll take care of you, but really, you are continuously their light source, charging their own solar battery. The idea is that since you're never becoming a full individual, you'll never be able to step out and be an individual. They expect you to then cater to them. And don't misunderstand. They've been mistreating you from a very young age. And you don't know any better. So you think that because you're filled with guilt and shame with their own words and action they've done to you, that is what a good person would do. take care of the narcissistic parent. Uh, and all this while, they still don't care about you. It's all about themselves. They didn't even give themselves the trouble of raising you. You raised yourself, but still, now they're acting like children, and you have to do everything for them. Which makes the child very surprised when someone thinks about them and like bringing a gift, for example. They're trained to only be happy by making someone else happy, so they're not quite sure what to do with that, because they're not supposed to be happy. Because if they're expressing happiness, and the narcissist parent sees it, they'll steal it, they'll destroy it, because they're not happy, and so you cannot be happy. And because they don't nurture the children and ignore their need, as it brings no glory to them, and they can't attune to their children's emotion because they're so self-absorbed, it creates a situation where if the kid doesn't have anything happening, it's funny, it's recording, but it's not showing me the time. All right, we'll try to keep it under the 90 minutes. And so, give you an example. My ex-husband convinced my eldest daughter to go live with him, and then proceeded to change her from the high school where she was close to my residence in French immersion to an English high school close to his house. She was in grade 7 with no friends, a much larger school. She felt completely lost there. Now, she claimed she was not feeling well and didn't understand school. And he lets her get away with that because the rest of it is too much trouble. Well, this went on for a month. And then you're going to say, well, Sonia, where were you during this time? Well, he had told the school that I had abandoned my child, and he didn't have my contact information, and I didn't have any rights to the information anyway because he had full custody. So after a month, I phoned the school asking, why am I not getting information about my child's schools? And how is she doing? When is the parent-teacher meetings? And they said, well, you're not allowed to have that information. I said, excuse me? So I had to go down. He didn't have to bring the court order where he has full custody. But I have to bring the court order to school to prove that it's shared custody and I'm entitled to that information. And I want to know what's going on. And so after I proved that I was supposed to get that information, they told me she hasn't been to school in a month. We haven't seen her. We don't even know what she looks like. I'm like, really? Okay. So I contacted my ex-husband and I said, why is she not at school? He says, well, she's sick. I said, what does she have? He says, I don't know. And I said, so she's been at home for a month and you have not taken her to a doctor and you think that's normal? I said, if you don't take her to the doctor tomorrow, I'll be showing up with the police and I don't care what she says. She's coming to live with me. And so the next day he did go to the doctor, at which point she told the doctor she felt uncomfortable, a lot of anxiety in this big school. She felt very lost. And she was hoping that she could go back to her old school. So he transferred her back to the French immersion school where she was enrolled previously, and she started going to school again. And so, eventually, after many years in court, the court did agree that the children had been coerced against me. There was parental alienation, and that's a strategy where one parent intentionally displays to the child unjustified negativity aimed at the other parent. So it makes you look bad. You're the witch, you're the thief, you're the liar. And through this strategy, it's to damage the relationship between the child and the other parent, and eventually turn the child's emotion against that other parent. And that's when they choose to go live with the abuser rather than the parent that, takes care of them properly. When I say that they chip away at you, they will do so in every possible effective way that they can find. And so I'm seeing a lot of people watching, a lot of people are saying, hi everybody. If you have questions, just post them. Now, what's the effect of growing up with narcissistic parents? Because trust me, being subjugated to a narcissistic parent will have undeniable effect on a person. Because you have not been nurtured or hugged, and they tend not to want to take care of you, They won't brush your hair or brush your teeth, or if they do, it'll be rough and painful if they brush it at all. My children used to come home on Friday. That's when we exchanged our week on, week off. And they had beautiful, beautiful long hair. And it was all matted and all stuck. And I was like, okay. So the only way to comb through that, and they stink. So the first thing we did was let's have a bath, get in our PJs for movie night. That was the whole point. And so we would get into that. And I would put almost, sorry for YouTube, just give me a second. So they would wash their hair, and then I would pour a half a bottle of conditioner on each of their heads. And while we're watching the movie, so kids' movies, usually about 90 minutes, I would slowly comb out all the knots out of their hair. Yeah, every week. And if that's not neglect, I don't know what you would call it. So, but he didn't see a problem with that. So that the teachers actually, when handing a project to the kids, they would make sure that the kids could complete the project at my house. And it was easy for them to know. They smelled good. Their hair was braided, or they had food. So yeah, that happened. They don't, you'd think that they'd want their kids to be pretty, but they don't want their kids to be pretty or handsome, because it takes attention away from them. And when they're punishing you, they'll take away something you actually love, and either take it away, throw it away, or destroy it, and then blame you for it. It was because of you this happens, right? But they didn't do it. A child of a narcissistic parent leaves childhood and enters adulthood exhausted. They feel like they're 40 at 20. And I kind of totally relate to that. I remember that. I don't know how my kids are feeling now that they're in their 20s. But the reason why the exhaustion takes place, because you're in survival mode the whole time. And so that means that your children, if you're a child of a narcissistic person, you were neglected, you were controlled, you lived in fear. I remember, if you're asking me how was your childhood, I would tell you I was in fear. That's my childhood. That's what yeah, there were these happy moments, but every time I was with my mother, I was in terror. And I don't know if I feared being abandoned, but I definitely knew I wasn't loved. It wasn't a fear of not being loved. I knew I was not loved. And that feeling can become a subconscious belief that if your mother doesn't love you, no one will love you, right? This is something I had to work on as an adult. The gaslighting that makes you doubt your own memory, the lying, the contradictions, the denial, the misdirections, that affects you as you're a child growing up. You become unable to safely express your needs in a relationship, and you're considered easygoing because you're like, I'm not going to speak. Might be used against me later. Okay, so I'm going to keep this one quiet. So you don't actually express your needs, and then you wonder why your relationships don't turn out. Well, they don't turn out because you never expressed that you needed something. But it's because of the way you were brought up. So rather than jumping from one relationship to another, when we get to the healing part, this is what I mean when you need to take the time to heal from the damage that was done. So eventually, what happens is that you get filled with anger because nothing ever comes. And so the top emotion will be anger. If you're able to get rid of the anger, then you'll see there's a whole series of emotions that are going to follow that spurge of anger. But the anger is very, very present. You fear setting boundaries because you don't, and you avoid conflicts because you just get manipulated and doing whatever they want anyway. And so you're very sensitive to other people's emotion, but you can't express your own. The unpredictability of a narcissistic parent behavior is what makes the children avoid contact with them and avoid confrontation. and make them isolate themselves in order to avoid any surprise anger, hits, argument. And if they're in the house but they're quiet, then that works. They're still under your control, but they're avoiding any of the encounters that could make things worse. So, yeah. So, what do you have to heal from a narcissistic parent? Well, you'll have low self-esteem, may or may not, possibly some, not all, but I'll give you a list. All right. Low self-esteem, over apologizing, lack of self-love, self-critical, self-doubt, lacking boundaries, self-shame, you're a people pleaser, and that's not going to help you in the end. Trying to rescue others, you shouldn't rescue people, that's not your job. Worry about other people's problems at your own expense, taking rejection personally, hiding your true self out of fear that you won't be loved or that it will be used against you. You feel unfamiliar when people are actually kind and you meet healthy people. You're putting others ahead of your own needs. You're the sacrificial lamb. You have no joy. You feel invisible. You feel unworthy. You don't feel heard or understood. You're emotionally immature. You lost who you are, or you never were able to find who that is. You're unable to tackle real life situation or criticism, and you don't feel accepted. You're exhausted from survival mode, and you just need a break from it all. So there's a long list there. So if you are the surviving child of a narcissistic parent, I encourage you to seek help in therapy. I encourage you to talk to others, because you don't have to be in pain anymore. You don't have to be alone anymore. And the world is a good place. You just got to get out of the hole the narcissistic parent put you in. Now, what about the other parent, right? He'll never have two parents that are both narcissists. They cannot exist in the same universe. But the other parent will do one or two things. They'll separate or get a divorce. And they will be able or try to give love and care to the child whenever it's their visitation period. The narcissist parent won't let go that easily, and it will be a lifelong struggle. But the non-narcissist parent, all I can say to you is that don't let go, don't give up, and be present in the moment every chance you get. Now, knowing what your children are not getting from the other narcissistic parent, please try and do everything you can to provide it while they're with you. Like I said, my parents stayed together, but I had this other person that provided support on a regular basis for me. So I have that to help me, and it will help. It's not perfect world, but it will help. Oftentimes, if the other parent sticks around, they're unable to stand up to the narcissist, and they become the enabler. And if there are more than one child in the family, they can take on different roles, like the golden child, the black sheep, or the lost child. It's not a pleasant family situation. My father was the enabler of my mother. When I was 18, I figured that I was finally an adult and I could have a conversation to my father about it. So I picked a location outside the house where my mother was nowhere near. And I told my dad, I said, you know what she was doing. You know how she was acting. Like, you're the father. Why didn't you do anything? And then he says, well, I was born in 1972. My dad was born in 1925. So technically he's old enough to be my grandfather. But nonetheless, he's my dad. And he says, well, the man's role is to go to work, provide a roof over your head, make sure you have food to eat. I provide it. And it was your mom's job to take care of the raising of the children. She knows what she's doing. Like that. She beats us. She threatens us. She does this. She does that. And then when he could no longer deny that he knew, he answered, well, you know what she's like. And you know what that means? That actually meant that if he said anything and stood up for any of us, the children, she would turn that anger, that spiteness, that manipulation, and that hurting you towards him. So we basically were meat shield for my father. And at the point, I was ready to explode. I was ready to lynch my father. And then I took a deep breath and I said, yes, actually, I do know. But you were still my father. You're much bigger than I am, and you're supposed to be wiser. So I did expect you to do something about it. But now I realized that she had you completely under her control. And I forgive you. Because my father, I'd been under her control, oh, by that time, 50 years. So maybe 40 years, but it doesn't matter. I was actually able to understand what he was saying. It's you don't want to be on her bad side. So I get it. And I promised my father I would never bring that back up again. I said, you know what? Fine. I'm an adult now. Yay. And I'll take care of me. But I said, now that you know what she's like, and we both agree that she will meddle and try to ruin this relationship, can we on our own, even though you're still married with her because you love her and you won't leave her, try to build a daughter-father relationship, the two of us? Can we try to build that? And my father broke into tears and he said, yes, I'd love that very much. So I was able to enjoy a little over 20 years where I would make sure I would phone my father when my mother wasn't home so I could talk to him. And I would visit and make sure that I would have some time with him alone so that we were able to have a father-daughter relationship and something that was a lot healthier. And I'm very glad I did. So if you are the child of a narcissistic parent and you have an enabler as your other parent, you can react in anger, if you will. You can feel that they should have protected you and did all those things. But you can also, if you're an adult now, try to see that they didn't have the tools to help you. They have already had their self-confidence and their self-esteem destroyed long before you came along, and try to see that they're victims too. So if the parents happen to divorce and are not enabling the narcissistic parent, the narcissistic parent will coerce the children against the other parent. They will put down the other parent, call them names, telling you they love you more, make promises. And if you live at separate houses, they will give you more freedom. They will tell you that chores are not important. They will do everything to gain your hurrahs, right? They'll guilt you into having emotion, especially for feeling like you miss the other parent. They will play games of rejecting you, withholding affection, dismissing or resenting you if you're becoming an individual and having your own thoughts. But mostly, they will try to make their house seem paradise compared to the other parent, pointing out all the terrible things you have to do, like pick up your dirty clothes and put them in the hamper and collect your dirty dishes and put them in a dishwasher, right? Because the other parent should be your slave. So if there's more than one child, there'll be a constant comparisons. They will encourage sibling rivalry rather than companions and supporting the family, because that gives them more control. And you know, there was 8 of us, so there was obviously the golden child, and the golden child had no idea he was the golden child because that's not what they're getting as a message. So it's only once we started, finally, I broke the silence and everybody started talking about their personal experience that they all realized, oh, wow, it wasn't peachy for him either, even though we thought, because she put him on a pedestal all the time, that his life was so fantastic because at least he had mom's love. No, he did not. So the best way to counteract, I would say, a narcissist is to talk to everybody else, match the stories, get the cracks, find the lies, see the manipulation. And you as a child of a narcissistic parent, you will never get away from them, even if you move away. It doesn't matter if you're 30, 40, 50 years old, you're still their pet, their toy, their possession. In order to move away, I moved 5,000 kilometers away. And so the only contact that she had was through phone. And at first, I thought I was setting boundaries by hanging up whenever she was mean or whenever she would gossip. But she wasn't getting the message. So eventually I had to be very clear and say, okay, listen, this is how it's going to work now. Whenever you're talking to me, you can't talk to me against my dad. And you can't gossip about anyone. So when I'm calling, I want to know about you and how you're doing. And that's literally what she did. And then she'd say, okay, well, that's all I have to say. Okay, call me back next week. And she hang up without asking me how my life was, how my kids were. She had no interest in finding out how my life was doing, even though it was 5,000 kilometers away. But at the very least, eventually she learned that when talking with me, there was a set rules. And if she didn't listen to those, I would just hang up. The abuse techniques, they went on until she died. But I just wasn't roped into them anymore. And I could identify them. Oh, that's what you're doing right now. Oh, now we're going for that. Oh, wow. Okay. And I said, still not working, Mom. And that would anger her to no end. But that's the beauty, right? The wool is pulled over your eyes and you can see the truth. So that's about it for the parent part. Now for the, gosh, this is longer than I thought it was going to be, but the relationship with a narcissistic individual, which a lot of you is probably waiting for this part. Now, are all bad partners in relationship necessarily a narcissist? No. There's many personality disorders. And so they could be sociopath, psychopath, antisocial, exploitative, manipulative personality disorders. They could be many other things. It doesn't mean necessarily that they're narcissistic. However, they could be all those things and narcissistic on top. So who knows? Some would like to tell you that you're specifically attracting a narcissist. You must be doing something to attract them. Well, I went from a narcissistic mother to a narcissistic husband. To me, that I guess was, I figured that's how relationship work, and I knew how to deal with a narcissist. So maybe that's why I went for that. I don't know. They'll say that if you suffered abuse and not healed your trauma, you might be attracting these people. What I think is that the universe wants you to face these people to learn how to love yourself. If there's anything that I've learned from all of this is how to love myself. Because, they also look for very strong, intelligent victims because that makes them look good in front of others. And I think, honestly, that the more intelligent, the more strong you are, the more of a challenge they see to disrupt you. I think they're actually liking the fact that you're strong and intelligent. So others say that empaths tend to go after narcissistic because they want to save them. Maybe not. In the end, I think that they will schmooze just about anything and anyone that moves. They're really good at it. And if you happen to fall in love with them, then it's really hard to get out. Because the first part of a narcissistic relationship is they're fantastic. That they just know how to, because they pretend to be the perfect partner for you. It's all pretense, but that's why it's so amazing and so easy to fall for it, because you actually go open-hearted and honest about what you're looking for. So you're expecting this to, to make sense, right? That they're not lying to get to you. They're actually telling you the truth. They're in this relationship because there's something in it for them. I don't know. Any type of abusive relationship will chip away at your confidence and your self-esteem and make it hard for you to leave. So I don't want you to feel guilty for not spotting the red flags. A good narcissistic, they won't let you see any. They will. The best protection against a narcissistic is to wait them out. So if they rush you, slow down. In the beginning of the relationship, they are fantastic, but eventually, being in a relationship with a narcissistic makes you feel lonelier than you were when you were single, and they make you believe that you're unlovable to keep you in their grasp. They want you to feel unworthy. So how could you go on without them? They want you to be invisible. And so they'll give you the silent treatment and they ignore your needs. If you know a friend or a family member or a sibling that is stuck in a narcissistic relationship, be patient, be kind, share this video with them, be loving and supporting, and do not abandon them. That is the treasure for any narcissist, is when you're walking away. Do not walk away. Assist them when they're ready to leave. Be supportive if they go back because they were manipulated and love bombed, and just continue being there for them. Point out the things like, listen, you're crying all the time. This relationship doesn't make you look very happy. Point anything, document anything to help them figure out that this isn't good for them. Just don't abandon them. Just don't leave them, and don't judge them. It's a very abusive relationship. And so unless you walked in those shoes, you have no idea how difficult it is to put it behind you. I went through it, and then a friend of mine went through it, and I was trying to be there for her because I had no one when I got out, and that was very hard. And she went back 2 times, and I don't think she was stupid. I just think he was really good at manipulating her and hurting her. And he had done such a good job at demolishing her self-esteem that it was hard. And I asked her, I said, what is it I can do to help you? She's like, just be there for me. Just don't judge me. Just let me figure this out. I'll figure this out. And so, ask your friend, what do they need? It's easy to spot a narcissistic if you know what to look for. And this applies to male, female, any gender, that it's an heterosexual relationship, an homosexual relationship, any kind of relationship. It doesn't matter. One other person is a narcissist and the other person is their victim. One of the things they do is isolate you from friends and family. And they won't say, I don't want you to see your family. No. That's too easy to spot. They'll say things like, oh, I can't go. I'm sick. I'm really not feeling well. Can you stay and take care of me? A loving partner would do that. Oh, I'd plan a romantic night for us. We can't go with these people. I actually bought tickets for a movie. Meanwhile, he goes to the washroom, buys the movie tickets, and drags you to the movies, keeping you away from these friends and possible social gatherings. Then you'll want to invite some friends over, and they'll find excuses. Well, the house isn't clean enough. And, I was thinking of doing renovations. They'll drag the renovations on and on. So, well, you're not finished. We shouldn't have people over. We don't have time to go to the social gathering. We were supposed to pull weeds, take care of the garden. I was thinking of repainting this room. This is how they're pulling the wool over your eyes. And you're like, oh, finally, we're painting that room. I've been asking for that for a long time, and now we're doing it. But does it have to be this weekend? And then you've been waiting for 6 months to paint the room. So you're like, fine, let's do it this weekend. Let's not go to the family gathering, right? All the intimacy is fake. They fear intimacy. And they just lie about loving you to make you believe they love you, but it's not real. What they really love is the idea of you loving them. They see themselves as a victim, so your emotions will have very little impact on them, and you'll always be wrong. They see no value in loving you. It's a waste of time. They only love themselves. They feel entitled and deserving of your admiration. And so what they actually love is your admiration, and none of it is true intimacy. This is important. They will never let you in. It's a very one-sided kind of type of relationship, and they don't trust to let you in, because then you'll see the lies, and that would make them vulnerable. And if they become vulnerable, their whole world can implode. So forget it. They can only keep the mask and the pretense on for so long, however, before it starts showing, which is why they keep their friends at a distance, keep family at a distance, so you can't confirm anything. Friendship tend to last a little longer because they're not intimate or living together, but that's only if they're acquaintances more than actual friendship. But don't lose the fact that it's an abusive relationship. And if you're in need to recognize that living with a narcissist means that you're in an abusive relationship, and the cycle of abuse is something that takes place in any abusive relationship. So if you don't think you have a narcissistic partners, but you see and recognize what I'm going to explain here, you are in an abusive relationship, or you know someone that's in an abusive relationship, please help them to realize this. First, there'll be a tension building, and it represents a breakdown in communication. So that could be the silent treatment, right? There's a fight brewing. Then there's the incident, whether it's verbal, emotional, or physical abuse. And there will be anger, blaming, arguments, threats, intimidation. And then your abuser apologizes while blaming you for the whole thing, giving you excuses, denies it was anything more than disagreement. And they wait for you to forget about it and enter this honeymoon phase, or the love bombing phase. And that's where they will lavish you with flowers, attention, affection, and then you start believing them again. You forgot what just happened, and the cycle repeats. The more the cycle repeats, the smaller and smaller in duration between cycles. Okay, so it'll occur more and more often, become more and more violent, and it will not cease. So what triggers them to be abusive? What triggers this incident? When you're not focused on 100% of their needs. When you maintain contact with some of your friends. When you presume to have your own interests, a separate group of friends, a career path, and it makes you financially independent. And when you don't put them on a pedestal or use excessive admiration or praise, when you dare to express your own opinions and thoughts that are contrary to theirs, when you challenge anything they say, when you point out they made a mistake, or that they're not the perfect image that they want to display. So what would that look like? Well, I signed up for a sewing retreat. The sewing retreat has to be in the same town I live in, so I'm going to come home every night. But during the day, I want to go, and by then, I'm not breastfeeding, but it's just before I'm going back to work. So I just want to have a little bit of time for myself before going back to work. So this sewing retreat, I'm learning to do different embroidery and different sewing. I've put a lot of time into making sure everything would be ready. And 2 weeks before the retreat, he informs me that he's going to the races in Portland. And I'm like, excuse me? He's like, yeah, I'm going with my friends. I'm like, no, you're not. He's like, you can't tell me what to do. I said, well, let me tell you this. I'm going to the sewing retreat. So if you're not going to be here to watch the kids, you better find someone who will, because I'm going. And so he managed to get his mom to come and watch the kids for the time that I was at the sewing retreat. He still went to the races and completely ignored the fact that I had been talking about it for 6 months straight. So it's not like I sprung this last second, and up to that moment, it was, yes, dear, of course, go have some fun. You deserve it. You work hard. But I forgot all about it, even though we've been talking about every day, every week for 6 months. I'm going to the races with my buddies. So that's what it looks like. Now, what's very interesting is that they start their smear campaign at the beginning of your relationship. And I don't know how that works, to be honest with you. But we both work for the same employer. So we both had employee files. And I don't know if the person who filed the email in my file wanted me to know about it, or because we were married and had the same last name, they misfiled. But the email was from him to staffing saying that he had no intent in marrying me, and I was crazy and a fool, and for thinking that he would put me ahead of his career. Meanwhile, he proposed to me. So I go to staffing and I tell them, well, we're engaged, we're getting married. So obviously, I'd like to be posted together. But they must be looking at me like I'm a loony, right? Because they just got the email saying, oh, don't believe it. No, it's all in their head. I've got the wedding ring on my finger. So, you know, I don't know. But the important thing is, I found out about this. So we had just got married, and he was already calling me crazy and delusional. Then we moved to a small town, and I was having a really hard time making friends, and I couldn't figure out why, because I'm pretty friendly. I talk to everybody, so it should be pretty easy for me to make friends. However, it wasn't, and I couldn't understand why. So I was having a hard time with that. And then it's in that small town that we separated and got the divorce. And someone was helping me move some boxes. And they're like, you're not such a bad person. They use another word, but it's probably vulgar to say here. And I'm like, no, of course I'm not. What makes you think I'm a terrible person? No, but that's what your ex-husband is saying. I said, well, yeah, well, put some water in the wine, and we're getting divorced. Obviously, he's not going to say great things about me. She's like, no. He was saying those things when he moved here. When he would come for coffee and you didn't because you were pregnant at home doing homework or whatever it is you were doing at home, he was destroying your reputation. That's why we didn't want to be friends with you. He said you were a terrible gossip, and that we shouldn't trust you with any of our secrets because you would spill the beans. And wow. From the very beginning. So if you wonder why no one's on your side, it's because they know it's going to end. And when it ends, they're hoping that the horrible, terrible reputation they build up for you up to this point is going to keep people on their side and not yours. So in the end, he did find a replacement. He did cheat on me. I found out about it. And the way I found out was through a phone call, which I thought was really odd. So I went and traced that phone call. And then I went and looked at his cell phone receipts to see how many times did he phone this weird number, to find out that he didn't have 5 minutes for me to help me with the dishes, but he was talking to this person up to 14 times a day. So when at dinner time, I confronted him with it. And there goes the gaslighting. It's in your head. It's in your imagination. We're going to couples therapy. I'm trying to work this through. And I'm like, dude, here's the phone number. Who's this person? She's a friend you haven't met. We're going through a tough time. I need someone to talk to. I'm like, I know your friends. And you only started phoning this number after the baptism weekend while we were at your mom's house, while you went out drunk for the night, 2 nights in a row. So, leave. I want you out of the house. And to this point, he's denying the whole thing. Meanwhile, I met the new girlfriend. She didn't stick around, unfortunately. And that's what happens is when they lose this shining light in their corner, they turn to where they can get light. And so they come back after you again. So, yeah, I wasn't lucky. They in order to make themselves look good, right, or feel better about themselves. Another example is I'm a member of Mensa, as I said before, and so that didn't suit his ego very well. That his wife was very intelligent. So French is my first language, English is my second language, and he would correct my English while we were in public, but never when we were alone at home. And eventually, I made the link, and I said, "Stop." And I asked the person I was addressing, I said, do you understand what I'm saying? Is my accent that bad? Am I using the wrong grammar? They're like, no, they totally understand what you're saying. So I turned back to him and I said, there's no more need for you to correct my English in public ever again. Thank you very much. And so we stopped going out in public. Can you beat the gaslighting? Yeah, sure. Like I had the phone records. I had, I was prepared for the argument. By then we'd been married for 6 years. I knew exactly what his pattern of argument was. But if their gaslighting is ineffectual, they'll just resort to a different technique. Because as you saw at the beginning of the video, there's many. They if they run out of ammunition, then they'll just pick a big fight with you and run off, and then give you the silent treatment until they try to find a way to make this work. One of the things he would do is that he would revert to a previous argument that we already had. And then one of them was about the finances. And I said, you put money on the credit card, I got to pay the credit card. And he insisted on me paying the minimum payment. And I was like, no, because we'll never get out of debt. So that doesn't work for me. So you put money on credit card, I'll put money to pay the credit cards. And I sat down and I showed him a budget and I explained everything, how everything worked. How do you make a budget? I figured maybe no one showed him this. I'll explain it to him. I wrote it all down for him. And then I put neatly in a folder and I put it away. So when, again, he picked that fight about the money, I said, hold on, I got the folder out. And I'm like, okay, so remember, I went over this. I wrote it all down the last time. Let's sit down and I'll go over this with you again. And then he was not interested. And he's like, oh, doesn't matter. And I was like, well, it mattered 5 minutes ago when you were yelling at me, but fine. If you're not wanting to go over this because it's all here, I'm going to put that away. So just remember, next time you bring money and you complain there's no money, I will bring out the budget and show you how much money you're actually spending and that it's your fault if there's no money. Did that solve the issue? No, because then we, picked something else to argue about, right? So then you think, okay, he's going to apologize because I heard him apologize. But the thing is how they apologize. Their apology sounds like you're taking it the wrong way. You are being too sensitive. It's not my fault that you feel. Let's forget this ever happened. Right? I only said that because of the way you acted. I'm sorry, but that was mine. I love you, but I will apologize if. So those aren't true apology. That's not being sorry, right? I didn't mean it that way. So again, so my perspective is wrong. It's all me that that's not what he was trying to say. Let's just move on. When they can't win, when you finally won the argument or you proved that it's not going to work, that's when they'll go, let's move on, let's forget about it. Or I don't know anybody else who would get upset about this, right? That's not an apology, folks. So why do they marry? If they know it's not going to work out, if they know they can't even stick to a relationship, well, they marry you when the apologies don't work anymore. They're not even, but when they stop working, that's when they marry you. And they're very good at making nice proposal. They get married because they think, oh, it's harder for you to walk away now. And it's true, because now you have a house, you have a mortgage, maybe you have kids. It's more complicated. You need an actual divorce. You can't just take your stuff and leave. So to them, it's a guarantee that they'll have a slave, a maid, cook, pursuable sex, but they won't stop cheating on you. Marriage to them is locking you in, not locking them in. It's also to them a legal excuse to abuse you. So it's not about love, care, and affection. It's about more control, right? So if you've been in a marriage with a narcissistic person, either you became an enabler or you're a very strong person and you have very high tolerance for abuse. But in the end, it's not going to end well. So I'm not sure why you're sticking around. If you think you're going to fix it, if you think more love's going to fix it, nothing's going to fix this. So unless you're planning on serving them selflessly and seeing your children being destroyed by them, I suggest now's a good time as any to leave. And they tend to push marriage very early on in the relationship because they don't want you to see through the cracks and the lies, right? Now, breaking up with them. Now, you break up when you start seeing the inconsistency that start to surface and getting to know them better. And the best way to avoid them, there's only one way: wait them out. Take your time getting to know them. Date them for a very long time. Don't get married. At least the old saying says you should be engaged for 6 months, and then you should get and you should wait a year after being engaged before getting married. So that means at least 18 months before getting married. And I understand that we live in a society where actually, uh, it's not my personal practice, but a lot of people are having sex with a lot of different people, and then they kind of like someone, and then they kind of have a discussion that they should be perhaps in a monogamous relationship just for sex because they're not really dating yet, and then eventually they start dating. Now, I may be old school, but I've been married to a narcissist, so I'm going back to very old school, where first of all we get to know each other as friends, and then if as friends we connect, we have things to talk about, we share mutual interests, and it's fun to be with you, then we can enter a relationship, monogamous, where there's not even sex that's going to happen right away. And that might drive away narcissist people. I don't know. But this tends to attract people who are more honest and kind. I've met some gentlemen behaviorally, right? People with conversation, people who don't just talk about themselves. So eventually, I hope to find the right person for me, but never again at the expense of neglecting or doubting my gifts and my ability. I love myself first and foremost. So, although you want to leave now, they will try to leave first because they don't like being abandoned. So they'll intentionally create chaos so they can have an excuse to leave. They'll clean out your bank account. So the worst thing you can do is have a shared banking with a narcissist, have separate banks. Focus on destroying or eliminating you or your reputation or make you lose your job. They'll go after everything. Because if you're miserable enough, you will go back to them because it was still not as bad when you were with them. This is the way they think. Their rage against you may intensify. They don't care about the consequences that you endure by them leaving, taking everything, emptying your bank accounts, you losing your job. You being punished because you've been that, because you abandoned them. And strangely enough, when they're cheating on you, they'll blame it on you for not being present enough, for loving enough. So why are you being punished? Because you actually saw through the lies, and you saw who they really were. And a narcissistic cannot have you see that, because then you may tell other people. So they have to destroy your credibility in order to survive. But when you eventually leave them, they will say that they're the victim, that you're the terrible person. They were the saints for putting up with you for this long. And they will speak poorly about you, your relationship, your family, to everyone and anyone who will sit down beside them and listen. Separating from a narcissistic, this will help you to perhaps prevent yourself from believing their lies and being love bombed into going back to them after quitting the relationship. Make sure you record evidence of their lies and their cheatings and their other behavior. Record anything from the point on where you're separating. If you have to be in contact with them, record conversations, save texts, save emails, and then go read them again before going back to them. Go see how they actually treated you when they were yelling at you, calling you names, or putting you down. If you need a reminder how bad it was, then sure, keep a reminder until you know that you won't ever go back. Managing to find the courage to leave and not to fall for their tactic to win you back, you will finally be able to realize that you were far worse with them than you originally thought. And 95% of what they said was a lie, and they never loved you. So the fact that they're gone from your life is a better thing. And you have then, once you've left, have to realize you were hurt by a narcissist relationship, and you should begin healing. If you have any thoughts, any of these thoughts while in a relationship, um, this points out that you're in an abusive relationship. So it's time to seek help, right? If you don't think it's not that bad yet, I'm not sure what you're waiting for. But it's a telltale sign of any abusive relationship, along with a narcissistic relationship. If I just do what he wants, he will change. No, he won't. No one is going to want me after this. I'm broken. I have to make things work with it. Well, first of all, yes, you're broken. So take the time to fix yourself, and then you'll find someone who wants you, because you'll be fine again. You're not broken forever. I cannot function without him. Yes, you can. He just made you believe that you couldn't. He's a good man. I love him. I just need to guide him to be the man I know he is deep down. The man you think he is deep down is the man that he pretended to be at the beginning of the relationship. That was all pretense. So what you're trying to do is not going to work. He was amazing at the start. What's changed? What's changed is that now he has roped you in and doesn't need to be pretending to be nice anymore. What else? It's all my fault. That's what they hope you will think. And they work very, very hard at making you believe that. Why is he hurting me? All I do is love him. He hurts you because he's unable to love you. He doesn't love you. If he didn't care, he wouldn't spend so much time on us. It's not about caring about the relationship. He's caring because he can manipulate you and control you, and that gives him power. So that's why he cares. I want to die. If you're wanting to die, to get out of a relationship, it's time to leave. I was there. I wanted to die. And I don't know. I looked around and I saw a bunch of toys on the floor, and then I realized, what am I doing? I'm a mother of 3 kids. I can't die. I have to be there for the kids. Okay, so I need to get out of here. I need to leave. That's what made me realize I'm at the point where I can no longer function in this relationship. And I don't know, maybe it was a point of pride for me. I didn't want to get a divorce. To me, that was a failure, and I didn't want to fail. But then I understood that a marriage is 2 people, and it can't work with just 1 people trying and doing all the work. It just doesn't happen. But that's what woke me up. That in order to finish this relationship that was so abusive, I wanted to die. But that would have meant abandoning my 3 children to him, and there was no way I was doing that. So I pulled off my socks, put on my pants, and me and the kids get out. I'm not good enough for him. That's not true. You're way better than him, and that's why he keeps you around. So think about those things. And if you need to, pause the video, rewind the video, listen to it again, but please, or buy my book when my book is out. Now, trying to leave or really leaving, if you manage to leave, expect that they won't let you go so easily unless they found a replacement. They might all of a sudden be particularly loving, caring, in short, love bombing you or trying the honeymoon phase again. They will beg you to come back. They'll agree to counseling. They'll claim that they needed you because they're gravely ill. Oh my God, they'll find so many things to try and pull you back in. They will profess that they can't live without you, that you guys belong together. If that doesn't work, they'll send cryptic message, especially now with emails and text and trying to get you to respond. If they see it going nowhere, they will start telling your friends and family and anyone who will listen that they're perfect and you're the crazy one. And remember, there was the smear campaign that began at the beginning. So trying to reinforce that. They will attempt at damaging or stealing your property, stalking you, making false accusation, personal threats, and traumatize you further. Because, and I've had this said to me, if her life is miserable enough on her own, she'll come back to me. I did not. The best thing for you is to be off his radar and move out with your own life. And I'm not sure why anyone would want to stay in touch with a narcissist. Don't be ashamed to tell others the truth. The best way to counteract the tactics is to not be their victim anymore. Tell others what you're going through. Seek help, seek a therapist, seek legal help. Do not be silenced while they're trying to destroy you. Don't try to fight with them, but simply say to people, this is what's really going on. You have nothing to be ashamed of because you fell for their tricks and tactics. That they're experts at that. They will blame you no matter what. In the end, they'll just say, well, she's so negative, or she's so frustrating. I hope she gets the help she needs. She didn't want her family anymore, so that's why she filed for divorce. She abandoned us. She didn't want to see us anymore. They'll tell that to your children if you have children. And I don't have a solution for those of you caught in the custody exchange with a narcissist. The only thing that worked somewhat for me was to seek lawyers and judges. It's not the best choices. It's lengthy, it's costly, but with a narcissist, it might be the only solution. It's hard to remain calm when you see all their tactics and everything they're doing and all the lies they're spreading and the manipulation. And I couldn't handle it. So I let the lawyers deal with him calmly and let the judge enforce my rights. Because their demands, if you want a divorce and you're trying to get a divorce with a normal person, right? Not a narcissistic or abusive person, they will remember there were good times. They will remember you're still a person they loved at one point, but this person never loved you. So that doesn't count. And they feel entitled to everything. So they will try to take everything. So if you have to split assets and households, expect every excuses that they will try to take everything or destroy it. I played the piano, and we had a piano, but it came from his side of family. So when we got divorced, he took the piano with him. But he ended up throwing a perfectly good piano at the dump because he doesn't play. Why not let me have the piano? And I could have taught the kids to play the piano, but no. I remembered it. I wanted the stand-upright freezer. And he says, no, I want it. The price of the freezer was less than me having to go to court and argue in front of a judge. So I just let him have it. I saved my money and eventually bought a new one. There are things that it's not worth fighting for, especially if it's material things, unless their demands are so crazy that it makes no sense at all. And I know this happens. So if you actually think that they'll come to an agreement with you, good luck. I'm sorry, but that's not going to happen. And it's despicable, the price it costs to get a divorce and to get away from these people. And those are the people who really need it. And I'm sorry to say that the fair deal, even though at this point you don't think they deserve anything, there's a law, and the law dictates how much they should get and what you should pay for child support. And at least you'll pay that and not more. Canada is a no-fault divorce, so they can't refuse you a divorce, but they can refuse to amicably divorce you. So when it comes to custody, and that should be the only reason why you stay in touch with a narcissist is because you have children together. If you can get someone to pick up and drop off the kids to eliminate as much contact with the abuser, do so. I wasn't so lucky, so I had to see him every week. It was a high source of stress and anxiety every single time. And the children became a tool for him to continue hurting me and manipulating me. He lied in court, scheduled for life for him. I got a divorce, but I had a lawyer for 20 years to deal with all his manipulation and lies. One time he said I tried to run him over with my car. So he called the police and I was investigated. I proved I didn't do it, but still, that was stressful. Then the other time said I was beating the children, and so had social services investigate me. Again, I was cleared of charges. The investigation cleared my name, but he knew that every time he does those things, I'm stressed, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, and he just keeps chipping away at it, and chipping away at it. So if you're receiving child support from a narcissist, he'll make excuses not to pay on time. He'll punish you even if it hurts the children. The situation is to register with your provincial program for mainly the maintenance enforcement programs. They'll handle the collection and charge interest on arrears and seize money to pay off his debt. If you're the one having to pay child support, register with the enforcement program, because then they can't say you didn't pay on time. They can't say you skipped a payment, and they keep track of all the payments you're making. So it will make your life a lot easier. Also, it will limit the interaction you have to have with them. All the money will go through the enforcement program and not through the two of you. So, the sad thing is that now you're their target, and they need to convince the kids that they're the good guys. And so, where they were smearing you as a partner before, they're now smearing you as a parent. And there's no rules to stop them. And so they will do everything to make the transition from one house to the next difficult. They will make you look like an impossible person to live with, that what you're asking for is outrageous. For a while, I was picking up my girls, and they were crying, and they didn't want to leave their dad. And I'm like, what is this? I know they're not that happy here. So, what's going on? But they were pretty young, right? I got divorced, and my baby was 11 months. So it took 2 or 3 years before this started happening. And I sat them down. I'm like, okay, so why are you guys crying? Why don't you want to come to mom's house? Of course, I'm doing this now that we're at my house, not in front of him. And they're explaining to me that daddy is telling them that this might be the week where I will kidnap them and take them to Peru, where they'll never see their father again. Yeah. I'm a federal employee of the Canadian government. I have a good job. I have a house. I have another child. And now all of a sudden, I'm just going to pack everything up and abandon everything and go into a life of hiding in a third world country. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But, however, to that little 3-year-old, that was very real. And she was very afraid. And she didn't want to live in this third world country where everybody's poor and she wouldn't get an education. It took several weeks for me to say to them repeatedly, mommy has to go to work. When you go to school, mommy goes to work. When you go to daycare, mommy goes to work. Mommy owns this house. This is our place. Mommy's not going anywhere. Until they finally stopped crying from when I picked them up. If your children are starting acting weird, talk to your children. Ask them what's going on. And if you're the healthy parent, ask how they're feeling. Ask how they're doing, and spend quality time with them. If you watch what the narcissistic parent is accusing you of, most likely that's what they're doing. So, amongst other things, they will be promising gifts or cars when they grow up. Long promises, yes, but they're dangling these very, very long stick on a carrot. So if you promise the sports car when you turn 16, but you're 5, well, you still got 11 years to wait until they see if that promise is going to become true, right? And then when it's time to turn over the sports car to you, then there'll be delays and excuses, and you'll never get that sport car to you. They will be inflating children's dreams, telling them, oh, of course, you're so good at soccer. You'll go to university and play the university team. And you don't have to save money or work because you're so good, the university is going to let you play, for the soccer team, and then you go to school for free. And then university time comes, and they're not playing for the university soccer team, and they do have to pay for their education, and there's no money saved up. And that's when reality, it feels like a cement wall. That's when you have to wake up and reality is not nice. How do you heal from a narcissistic relationship? We're getting to the nice part now. um, they provoke the narcissists provoke a lot of negative emotions in others in order to get reaction, and they can do this by saying something rude, insensitive, or doing something cruel. And they shame you for those emotions by claiming you're crazy, saying you're overreacting. They call you a drama queen, right? So when you're finally leaving, don't allow them to control you anymore and tell you how you feel. You were never a drama person. Your requests for normal and balance. The good times were just there to blind you from their manipulation, and it was a part of their abuse cycle. There are plenty of nice people around and much superior to the narcissistic you just left. But before simply jumping into a relationship with someone else, take the time to ask yourself why, what's broken about me, what needs to be healed. It's time to identify your own hurt and start healing the relationship with yourself. You're far more capable than a narcissist wants you to believe about yourself. And true happiness will start when you start putting yourself first and healing yourself. Because many of the symptoms of someone finally exiting a relationship, narcissistic relationship, will be mentally, emotionally, physically exhausted, continually on high alert. You're always walking on eggshells. I hated that. You feel like you lost yourself. You no longer know you are. And I went through that. I was a mother, I was a wife, I was a worker, but who was me? That was gone. You feel isolated, lonely. You, because of the stress, you have hormonal imbalance that can leave you with hair loss, headaches, migraine, thyroid imbalances, weight issues, adrenal issues. So you might need to see an actual doctor or a naturopath to help you deal with some of the after effects of this. You're suffering from low self-esteem. You don't feel you were good enough. You feel like there's something wrong with you. You're in constant state of confusion. It feels like things are overwhelming. You might be depressed. You might have OCD, compulsive disorder. So you might need therapists. You might need medical help beyond just a medical doctor, right? So it could be depression, anxiety, chronic pain. You could be having eating problems, sleeping problem. You could be suffering from PTSD. And all of this makes it really, really hard for being able to function every day and accomplish everyday tasks. So your entire being, your mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual body is suffering. And out of all this, you feel beaten and broken. And you can't jump into another relationship. You need to take care of you. So it's a time for introspection. It's the time to take a good look at everything you put aside while you're in that relationship. And it's not too late for any of your dreams to come true. Everything I put aside, I've accomplished. Not in a day, not in a week, but I've been divorced now for 20 years. And I've managed to regain myself, my confidence, and I accomplished every single dream that I had. So, and it could be things like simple as I started with water rafting, parachuting, bungee jumping, getting a tattoo. That gave me a tremendous sense of freedom just to get a tattoo. But that's what I needed at the time. I also wanted to write a book. I wanted to paint again. I wanted to travel. I wanted to sew. And I spent time feeling. It's okay to feel. And journaling about it. And remember, my mother was a narcissist. So this was doubly compounded, right? So finally being able to say, I feel this way. And sometimes I still at some point going, okay, I don't know what this emotion is, or I don't know why you're so upset about this. I need to figure this out. I need probably more time to process emotion than other people, just because I wasn't allowed as a child and as a wife. So, but I'm smiling, I'm laughing, and I'm doing it without the fear of being judged or being put down for it. Fun came back into my life, and that was really good. I can honestly say that it took at least 5 years for me to feel back to being somewhat normal. So it didn't happen overnight. Because at first you're laughing, yeah, okay, everybody's good with me laughing. I can smile, and then eventually I became me again, the girl you know in these videos. Uh, but this experience taught me more about myself and how to truly love unconditionally, and what being in a relationship actually really means, what it should look like. I learned so much about myself because I went back and I explored who I was, my abilities, my gift, and I never again would let anyone undermine me. I'm still dealing with issues regarding the kids and the parental alienation. I think more time is going to be needed to undo that damage and try to heal that relationship. And all I can do is be open and ready to receive them, and work on that particular aspect of that relationship with them when they're ready. Meanwhile, I will, heal myself. But now I said 5 years, and question popped up. Why does it take so long? Well, think about it. You need to heal from the abuse, the infidelity, the deceit, the chronic criticism, the emotional, psychological manipulation, the financial exploitation, the betrayal. And before you can do all that, you have to find the courage and the strength and self-esteem and the confidence to leave them. And you need to recover from the exhaustions and the hypervigilance. And just that alone will take some time before you can start working on everything else. So be patient with yourself and give yourself some time. So how do you protect yourself from a narcissistic? Well, education is the key, which is why I'm telling you, please share this video. Instead of just little posts on Pinterest and things, this is a full explanation, A to Z kind of video. Understand the root cause of narcissism. Understand that you need to take time to get to know someone. And if you know how it presents, if you can recognize the symptoms and the signs, that's the best way to get away from them, right? Maybe you're not in a narcissistic relationship, but maybe someone who sees the share or the post will listen to it and recognize that they're in trouble and they need help. Healthy boundaries and standards for the way that you want to be treated, and to stick to them. Don't ever let anything slide. If you're a normal person, you have normal boundaries. So why not be having your boundaries respected? Why does someone have to break in and push you out to the side? Try to understand that discern behaviors that are not tolerable or acceptable, and do not tolerate them or accept them. It's important to heal the past trauma. So, like in my case, I needed to heal the trauma from having a mother that was narcissistic, and healing my relationship with a narcissist, right? Don't enter into a relationship because you're tired of being alone, because you think you're getting old, because you think is the last chance you're going to get. Get comfortable being alone and create a life that you love. Right? Take care of yourself by yourself. Don't depend on someone else to care and nurture you. Learn how to do that for yourself. Work on your self-esteem and your confidence. That's the best way to never settle for a person or a situation that is not good for you. Allow yourself to grieve, because there's a grieving part that comes with it. Join a support group, find a therapist, ask some friends, or get back in touch with some friends that he pushed away and see if you can rekindle that friendship maybe. Now, if you're looking for revenge, the real question is, why do you really care? Let go. It doesn't matter anymore. Focus on this instead. You're finally free. Unless there are kids involved. If there's no kids involved, you delete them from your contact list. You block them on social media. Forget revenge. You're wasting your time and energy. They don't even care about you. So revenge is nothing to them. Think of yourself instead and heal. Now, you free yourself from the guilt, from the shame, from your anger. Don't waste another second on them. They don't think anything is wrong with them. So why would they change? And why would this affect them? It doesn't. They live in a web of lies. So they don't care about you. And so be happy for you. Love yourself for you and do it for you. Okay? You'll never get closure from a narcissist. They will never admit they did anything wrong. There's no remorse. And they want to feel powerful and in control. So remember, they're a highly toxic individual that cannot be reasoned with. And the best closure for you is if you can finally let go and move on. All right? Eventually, the narcissist will age and they will get old. And that's when their scam stopped working. They can't hide and they've burned all the bridges. And eventually, they have nowhere to go. They get too old to move around and start somewhere fresh. Their charm fails them and they finally have nothing to show for their life. So all the bragging they were doing, all the pretending they were doing amounts to nothing. So eventually, as they age, they got nothing. And so people are like, so that was all fib. That was all hair. They become easy to spot. So, people simply don't buy their stories of blame, of conspiracy. People walk away from them because they're tired of the victim story. So they end up alone, sad and pathetic. So let them be what they are. So are they a narcissist? Okay, so let's early in the relationship, let's summarize this because we're pretty much at the end of this. Yeah, we're almost done. So early in the relationship, they seem to be head over heels for you. You don't even know what you've done for them to love you so much. It doesn't make sense. They share all your values and interests. They proclaim they're your soulmate. They call and text you all the time. They want to be with you all the time. You're showered with affection. It's nice. It's really nice. They promise they will make all your dreams come true. And they kind of make you feel sorry for them, right? But you're swept up in this amazing romance story, and they're trying to hurry this relationship along. They're trying to pressure you to move in together or to get engaged or to get married. But they will be exhibiting these following traits. Charm, their charisma. They're very magnetic energy. They're very talkative. They never at a loss for a word. They're used to spinning lies. There's always something. They always got something. Sexual magnetism. They always look for excitement because they get bored easily, which is why they'll cheat on you so much, because you're very boring after a short while. They're completely irresponsible and reckless with their actions or their money. And they have this sense of entitlement. So watch it when you go to a restaurant. Watch how they act when they have a parking space taken away from them. Watch them, right? Because they'll exhibit nasty behaviors like lying, and there'll be gap in their stories. So don't be afraid to ask questions. And if they don't have an answer, walk away. They'll be putting down their previous relationship or not want to talk about them. They'll blame others for all their problems. They're secretly into pornography. And so secretly, in fact, that I never knew about it until he finally left the house, and I was in the garage preventing him from taking the tools my own father had given me. And I turned around and I saw a box of porn, of movies and magazine. I'm like, I didn't even know that was in my house. And I had no idea. So, and they'll try to start manipulate you to get what they want. Try to eat guilt. They'll be trying all these different techniques I name at the front. Eventually, they'll switch their love on and off. And I remember the first time he did that, my ex-husband, to me. I was like, what do you mean? You like me, but you don't love me. You don't like me, but you love me. It didn't make any sense to me. And then you're going to start seeing the double personality, the public persona and the in-house persona. They'll threaten to commit suicide. They'll hurt you, but act like nothing happened. They'll cheat on you, deny it happened. There will be no empathy, no remorse, and no conscience. So hopefully this was helpful. It was long, and I knew it was going to be long by the time I prepared it. But I figured, it's a lot of people have been asking me about this, so I figured I'll do it. I'm preparing for my new book on narcissism. It'll be available on Amazon when I'm done, because I want to make sure that there's exercises and things to help you heal from it. That's, recognizing it is one thing, getting out is another thing. You will need different types of help, but at least emotionally, or if I can start you on the path to at least figuring out, okay, this is the kind of services I need, I'm finishing building that up, and then I'll be publishing that book. And we also have our retreat on the 12 level of consciousness. That's a great way to start healing the process, and we offer that here at the Redu Wellness Center in the summer. So lots of people were watching, very few questions, but I hope I got them as we were going along. Sometimes comments go by pretty fast. Hi, Frank. It's nice to see you. And if you're watching after the fact, you can lodge a comment and I will answer. I always answer all the comments. I thank you for your time and the nice comments I got. This was a difficult one for me because, as you can see, it brought up a lot of memories, but I'm hoping that I'm helping someone somewhere with this video. So don't hesitate to share. Please just tell people about it and share it so we can help someone somewhere who needs to hear this. Thank you. So I'll talk to you next week. Now, next week's a fun one. We're talking about the trip to Peru in November 2024, and we'll have pictures, and I will explain all about this wonderful trip I'm organizing. And if you want to join us, there's a few spots available, so you'll be welcome for that. So thank you. Good night.